The iron burned. Not the shackles, those had been removed hours ago, replaced by silk ropes that felt like lies against her wrists. No, the iron that burned was deeper. It was the brand they'd pressed into her collarbone 3 years ago, the day they declared her unwanted, the day her own pack decided she wasn't worth keeping. Sarah stumbled through the corridor, barefoot on stone that seemed to suck the warmth from her bones. The Alpha King's palace was a maze of shadows and torchlight, all sharp edges and cold marble. Beautiful, suffocating, just like the bargain she'd been forced to make. 3 nights, he'd said. Endure 3 nights in my bed, Omega, and I'll set you free. Free. The word tasted like ash. She didn't even know what freedom looked like anymore. Her breath came too fast, too shallow. The heavy wooden door to his chamber loomed ahead, carved with wolves mid-hunt, their eyes inlaid with something that glittered like moonstone. She could feel the pull of it, the command woven into the very air of this place. Her body wanted to obey, wanted to push that door open and walk inside like she had a choice. But she'd learned a long time ago that wanting didn't matter. Behind her, footsteps echoed. Guards, maybe, or servants whispering about the broken Omega the king had dragged in from the wastelands. She'd heard them earlier, their voices sliding under doorways like smoke. Did you see the mark on her neck? She's been rejected. Why would the king want her? He doesn't want her. He's testing something. Testing. That word lodged itself in her chest like a shard of ice. Sarah pressed her palm against the door, felt the wood hum beneath her skin. Something inside her stirred something she'd spent 3 years trying to bury. A flicker of heat, a whisper of silver flame that didn't belong to an Omega, couldn't belong to someone like her. She shoved it down. Hard. The door swung open before she could decide whether to run, and there he was, Kale, the Alpha King, standing at the far end of the room beside a window that framed the full moon like an accusation. He didn't turn to look at her, didn't need to. She could feel his awareness of her, like a hand at her throat. "You're late," he said. His voice was low, controlled, but there was something underneath it. Something sharp. "I wasn't aware I was on a schedule." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Good. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her shake. He turned then, and the moonlight caught the planes of his face, strong jaw, dark eyes that looked black in the shadows, a mouth that seemed carved for cruelty. But it was the scar that drew her attention, a jagged line that ran from his temple to his cheekbone, silver against bronze skin, a mark of survival. Of violence. "You agreed to the terms," Kale said, moving toward her with the kind of grace that predators had. Unhurried. Certain. 3 nights. That means you arrive when summoned. I didn't agree to anything. Sarah lifted her chin, even though every instinct screamed at her to lower her gaze, to submit. I was given a choice between this and execution. That's not the same as agreement. His lips curved, not quite a smile. Semantics. Survival. That stopped him. For just a moment, something flickered across his face. Recognition, maybe. Or respect. Then it was gone, replaced by that impenetrable mask he wore like armor. "You should have stayed in the wastelands," he said quietly. "You would have been safer." Safe? The word came out like a laugh, bitter and sharp. "There's no such thing as safe for someone like me. Someone like you." He tilted his head, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "And what exactly are you, Sarah?" The way he said her name like he'd tasted it before, like he knew the shape of it in his mouth, sent a shock of fear and something else down her spine. "You know what I am," she said. "Your guards made sure of that when they dragged me through your gates. Omega. Rejected. Worthless. Is that what you believe?" He was close now. Too close. She could smell him pine and smoke and something wild that made her wolf stir restlessly beneath her skin. "It's what everyone believes." "Everyone," Kale repeated. "Except me." The words hung between them like a blade. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. This was wrong. All of it. Alpha Kings didn't bargain with broken Omegas, didn't offer freedom in exchange for something as simple as 3 nights. There was always a catch, always a hidden price. "Why?" she demanded. "Why did you bring me here? What do you really want?" For a long moment, he said nothing. Just looked at her with those fathomless dark eyes that seemed to see straight through every wall she'd built. Then, he reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed his thumb across her collarbone. right over the brand. The iron that still burned. Because, he said softly, I know what you are, and it's not an omega. The silver flame inside her roared to life. Sarah jerked back, pressing her hand over the mark, trying to smother the heat that threatened to spill out. Not here, not now. She couldn't let him see, but he'd already seen. Cale's expression didn't change. But his eyes held something that looked almost like hunger. 3 nights, he said again, stepping back to give her space she desperately needed. That's all I ask. Stay. Let me prove what I suspect. And if I'm wrong. He paused, and for the first time, she heard something human in his voice. Something that sounded like doubt. If I'm wrong, you walk away, free. I'll make sure of it. And if you're right, Sarah whispered. Cale turned back to the window, his shoulders tense beneath the dark fabric of his shirt. Then everything changes. The moon glared down at them both, cold and unforgiving. Sarah felt the pull of it in her blood, in her bones. Felt the thing inside her that shouldn't exist clawing its way toward the surface. She thought of the wastelands. Of 3 years spent hiding, starving, running from shadows that had her scent. Of the loneliness that had become so familiar it felt like a second skin. She thought of freedom. Real freedom. The kind that meant she could breathe without fear. And she thought of the way Cale had looked at her not with disgust or pity, but with recognition. Fine, she said, and the word felt like stepping off a cliff. 3 nights. But if you try anything, you'll what? He glanced at her over his shoulder. And this time, his smile was real, dangerous. Burn me? The silver flame flickered in her palm before she could stop it. His smile widened. Good, Cale said. I was hoping you'd fight back. Before we step deeper into this world, into Sarah's spiral toward truth and power, I need you to do something for me. If you're already hooked, if you can feel the tension coiling in your chest, the questions burning in your mind, then you're exactly where I want you. But here's the thing about stories like this, they live and breathe because of you, your engagement, your investment. So hit that subscribe button right now. Join Clarissa Romance Collections. Because we don't just tell stories here. We craft addictions. We build worlds that won't let you go. Like this video. Drop a comment telling me, would you take the Alpha King's bargain? 3 nights for freedom? And if you want to see what happens when Sarah's secret finally explodes into the light, turn on notifications. Because this story is about to get wild. Now, let's see what the Alpha King is really after. Chapter 2. The bed was a trap. Sarah stood at the foot of it, staring at black silk sheets that probably cost more than her life was worth in the wastelands. The mattress looked soft. Obscenely so. The kind of softness that made you forget where you came from, made you think you could belong somewhere like this. She wouldn't touch it. Instead, she moved to the window where Cale had been standing moments before he'd left her alone to settle in, he'd said. Like she was a guest instead of a prisoner with an expiration date. The view stole her breath. His chamber overlooked the entire kingdom. Miles of forest stretched out in every direction, dark pines dusted with snow that glittered under moonlight. In the distance, she could see the village lights, flickering like fallen stars. And beyond that, past the mountains that ringed this territory like teeth, the wastelands, her chest tightened. Out there, she'd been invisible. Starving and scared. Yes, but invisible. Here, in this palace of marble and moonstone, she felt exposed. Like every secret she'd buried was written across her skin in letters of fire. I know what you are. And it's not an omega. Cale's words circled through her mind like wolves. How could he know? She'd been so careful. 3 years of suppressing every flicker of power, every hint of the thing that lived inside her. 3 years of making herself small and weak and forgettable. The silver flame pulsed beneath her sternum, responding to her agitation. No, she told it firmly. Not now. Not ever again. The door opened without warning. Sarah spun, heart leaping into her throat, but it wasn't Cale. A woman stood in the doorway, older, maybe 50, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun, and eyes that assessed Sarah like she was livestock at market. She carried folded fabric in her arms, dark and soft-looking. I'm Mira, the woman said, her tone brisk but not unkind. The king asked me to bring you something more comfortable. She set the clothes on a chair near the fire. Those rags you're wearing won't do. Sarah glanced down at herself. The dress she'd been given when the guards hauled her from the wastelands was thin, gray, already fraying at the hem. It smelled like fear and dirt. "I'm fine," Sarah said. Mira's eyebrow arched. "You're shaking." She was. Sarah hadn't even noticed. The cold had seeped so deep into her bones over the past 3 years that she'd stopped feeling it. Stopped feeling much of anything except the constant, gnawing need to survive. "The king doesn't usually," Mira paused, choosing her words carefully. "He doesn't usually bring people here. To his private chambers. I'm not people," Sarah said flatly. "I'm a bargaining chip." "Is that what he told you?" "It's what I am." Mira studied her for a long moment, and Sarah fought the urge to look away. There was something unsettling about the woman's gaze, like she could see past the surface, down to all the broken pieces Sarah kept hidden. "You're afraid of him," Mira said finally. "I'd be stupid not to be." Fear and stupidity aren't the same thing. The older woman moved to the fire, added another log with practiced efficiency. "The king is complicated, dangerous, yes, but not cruel, not like the others." "The others?" Mira's expression darkened. "The alphas who came before him, his father, his uncles." She straightened, wiping her hands on her apron. "This kingdom has been ruled by monsters for a long time. Kale is the first one who's trying to be different." "Different doesn't mean good," Sarah said. "No," Mira agreed, "but it means something." Before Sarah could respond, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Heavy, deliberate. Kale's. Mira's demeanor shifted instantly back straight, hands folded, expression neutral, the mask of a servant. She nodded once to Sarah and slipped out, passing Kale in the doorway with a murmured, "My king." And then it was just the two of them again. Kale had changed. The formal jacket was gone, replaced by a simple black shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. It should have made him look less intimidating. It didn't. If anything, it made him more dangerous. All that barely contained power, wrapped in something casual, almost human. "You're not in bed," he observed. "You're not in bed either." Sarah shot back. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Fair point." He crossed to a cabinet on the far wall, pulled out a crystal decanter filled with amber liquid, poured 2 glasses, brought one to her. Sarah stared at it. "I don't drink. It'll help you sleep." "I don't sleep." That made him pause. He set the glass on the windowsill beside her, close enough that she could reach it if she changed her mind. "Nightmares?" She didn't answer, didn't need to. The truth was written in the shadows under her eyes, in the way she held herself like she was ready to run at any moment. Kale leaned against the wall, close but not crowding. "I'm not going to touch you," he said quietly. "If that's what you're afraid of, then what's the point?" The words came out sharper than she intended. 3 nights in your bed, those were your terms. So what game are you playing?" "No game." He took a slow sip of his drink, watching her over the rim. "I need to see if my theory is correct, and for that, you need to be here. In my space, near me." "Why?" "Because power calls to power," Kale said. "And if you are what I think you are, you won't be able to hide it much longer. Not here, not with me." The silver flame roared inside her chest, and this time she couldn't completely suppress it. Heat bloomed across her skin, raising goosebumps, making the air shimmer. Kale's eyes tracked the movement like a predator scenting blood. "There," he breathed. "That's what I thought." Sarah pressed her back against the cold window, trying to draw the chill into her body, trying to smother the fire before it consumed her. "You don't know anything about me. I know you were rejected by the Crescent Moon Pack 3 years ago." His voice was matter-of-fact, reciting information like he was reading from a report. "I know they branded you and cast you out into the wastelands to die. I know that shouldn't have been possible, and Omega doesn't survive 3 years alone. Not without a pack. Not without protection. Maybe I'm just stubborn. Maybe." He set his glass down, moved closer. Not touching, but close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. "Or maybe you survived because you're not what they said you were. Not what they tried to make you believe." "Stop." Her voice cracked. "Just stop." "Why did they reject you, Sarah?" "Because I was weak." The lie tasted bitter. "Because I wasn't strong enough, wasn't valuable enough to keep." "Liar." The word hit her like a physical blow. Kale reached out slowly, so slowly she could have stopped him, and touched her collarbone again, right over the brand. And this time, When his skin met hers, something inside her snapped. Silver fire exploded from the point of contact. Not burning him, not hurting him. Just illuminating. Like her power recognized him, reached for him, wanted to twine itself around him and never let go. Kale's eyes widened. Not with fear. With something that looked dangerously close to wonder. Moonflame, he whispered. You carry Moonflame. Sarah shoved him back, gasping, wrapping her arms around herself as the fire retreated back into her bones. No, you're wrong. I'm nothing. You're a lunar Omega. His voice was rough, raw. The first one in 200 years. The world tilted. Sarah's knees buckled, and suddenly Kale was there, catching her, lowering her gently to the floor because the bed was too far and she couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Lunar Omega. The words were a myth. A legend. A cautionary tale alphas told to keep their packs in line. Beware the one who burns with moonfire. She will bring either salvation or destruction. That's not possible. Sarah gasped. Lunar Omegas don't exist. They're just stories. Stories based on truth. Kale was kneeling beside her now, one hand on her shoulder, grounding her. Your pack knew. That's why they rejected you. Not because you were weak, because you were too powerful, too dangerous to control. They said I was broken. They lied. Tears burned behind her eyes. She hadn't cried in 3 years. Wouldn't start now. If what you're saying is true, if I really am, then why didn't they just kill me? Why brand me and send me away? Kale's expression went dark. Because killing a lunar Omega brings a curse. The old laws forbid it. So they did the next best thing. They tried to make you believe you were worthless. Tried to bury your power under shame and rejection until you forgot what you were. And it worked. The admission felt like glass in her throat. I forgot, or I tried to. I spent 3 years running from my own shadow, terrified that if anyone saw the real me, they'd destroy you. Kale finished softly. I know. Because that's what this world does to anything it doesn't understand. She looked up at him then, really looked. Past the scar and the stern expression and the title that made him untouchable. She saw something she recognized. Something that looked like loneliness, like he'd spent his own lifetime hiding pieces of himself to survive. Why do you care? She whispered. Why does any of this matter to you? Kale was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. Because I've been searching for you for 5 years, and I was starting to think you didn't exist. The admission hung between them, heavy and impossible. Searching, Sarah repeated. Why? He stood, offered her his hand. After a heartbeat of hesitation, she took it, let him pull her to her feet. His palm was warm, calloused, and the contact sent another flicker of silver through her veins. There's a prophecy, Kale said, and he sounded tired. So tired. An old one. It says that when darkness threatens to consume the wolf kingdoms, a lunar Omega will rise. And the Alpha who bonds with her will either save our people or watch them burn. Sarah's heart stopped. Bond. You mean a mate bond? His eyes met hers, and there was something vulnerable in them now. Something that looked almost like fear. Yes, you think I'm... She couldn't even say it. Couldn't voice the possibility that the universe would be that cruel. No. Absolutely not. I don't think... Kale's thumb brushed across her knuckles, and the touch sent sparks racing up her arm. I know. I've known since the moment I saw you in those woods, barely alive, fighting off rogues with nothing but a broken branch and sheer will. I felt it then. The pull. I don't feel anything. Sarah lied. Another lie. But he said it gently. You feel it too. That's why you're terrified. He was right. She did feel it. Had felt it the moment he'd walked into this room, that invisible thread trying to tie itself around her heart, trying to make her believe in things like destiny and fate, and meant to be. She'd spent 3 years learning that the universe didn't give a damn about her. Wasn't about to start trusting it now. 3 nights, she said, pulling her hand free. That was the deal. After that, I'm gone. I don't care about prophecies or mate bonds or saving kingdoms. I just want to be free. Something flickered across Kale's face. Disappointment, maybe. Or resignation. 3 nights, he agreed. And then you decide. Stay or run. Either way, the choice is yours. I won't force you. That should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like a challenge. Sarah moved toward the bed not because she wanted to, but because standing here, close to him, was making it harder to breathe, harder to think. She sat on the edge, felt the silk sheets cool against her skin. Cale remained by the window, giving her space. "You should rest," he said. "Tomorrow will be difficult." "Why? What happens tomorrow?" His smile was grim. "Tomorrow, you meet the court, and they'll want to know exactly why I've brought a rejected Omega into the heart of my kingdom." Fear spiked through her. "You're going to tell them what I am?" "No." His voice was firm. "But they'll sense something is different. And some of them will try to use that against you. Against us both. Then why tell them anything? Why not just keep me hidden? Because hiding is what almost killed you once already." Cale turned to face her fully. And in the firelight, he looked like something out of legend himself. All sharp edges and banked power. "You've spent 3 years making yourself invisible, Sarah. It's time to be seen." The words resonated somewhere deep in her chest, in the place where the silver flame lived. Time to be seen. She didn't know if she was ready. Didn't know if she'd ever be ready. But as Cale dimmed the lights and settled into a chair across the room, keeping his promise not to touch her, to give her space, Sarah felt something shift inside her. Maybe it was hope, or maybe it was just the beginning of the end. Either way, she was here now. In the Alpha King's bed. And there was no going back. Outside, the moon watched, waiting. Chapter 3. Sleep didn't come. Sarah lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling where shadows danced from the dying fire. Across the room, she could hear Cale's breathing steady, controlled, but not quite deep enough to be sleep. He was awake too, watching, waiting, always waiting. She closed her eyes and tried to find that empty place in her mind where memories couldn't reach her. But tonight, with the silver flame stirring restlessly beneath her skin and Cale's words echoing in her skull, the walls she'd built came crumbling down. 3 years ago, the memory rose like floodwater, drowning her in details she'd tried so hard to forget. She'd been 19, young, naive, still believing that pack meant family, that belonging meant safety. The Crescent Moon Pack had raised her, fed her, taught her to hunt and fight and survive. She'd grown up thinking she was one of them, another wolf child born under a waning moon, destined for an ordinary life as an Omega. Useful, necessary, but never special, never dangerous. The first sign came during her shifting ceremony. Every wolf went through it at 18, the ritual that awakened your true form, let you taste your animal for the first time. It was supposed to be beautiful, sacred, a celebration. Sarah's had been a nightmare. She remembered standing in the ceremonial circle, surrounded by the entire pack. The full moon overhead, fat and silver, and so bright it hurt to look at. The Alpha Marcus, a gray-haired man with kind eyes who'd always treated her with something close to affection, had placed his hand on her shoulder. "Let it come," he'd said softly. "Don't fight it. Let your wolf rise." So she had, and everything went wrong. The shift usually took minutes. A gradual transformation, bones rearranging, fur sprouting, until you stood on 4 legs instead of 2. Painful, yes, but manageable. Natural. Sarah's shift had been instant, violent. One moment she was human, the next, she was standing in the center of the circle as a wolf, but not a normal wolf. Her fur had been pure white, so white it seemed to glow. And her eyes had been silver. Liquid silver that reflected the moonlight like mirrors. The pack had gasped, stepped back, because white wolves were rare. Sacred, and silver eyes meant lunar bloodline. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came when the moon flame erupted from her skin like a star being born. Silver fire that didn't burn, didn't destroy, just was. Pure power, ancient and terrible and completely beyond her control. It had lasted maybe 10 seconds, just long enough for everyone to see. Long enough for Marcus's kind expression to transform into something that looked like horror. And then, mercifully, she'd blacked out. When she woke, she was in chains. Sarah's breath hitched in the darkness of Cale's chamber. Her hand moved unconsciously to her collarbone, tracing the raised scar tissue of the brand. Even now, 3 years later, she could smell the burning flesh, could hear her own screams. They'd kept her locked in the pack dungeon for 3 days. No food, no water, Just darkness and the sound of voices arguing above her head about what to do with the abomination they'd accidentally raised. On the 4th day, Marcus had come. He'd looked older somehow, tired, like he'd aged years in those 3 days. "I'm sorry," he'd said, and he'd actually sounded like he meant it. "The council has decided, you're too dangerous to keep. If word gets out that we've been harboring a lunar Omega, as other packs will come, they'll want to claim you, use you. It will tear us apart." "I don't understand," Sarah had whispered. Her throat was raw from screaming, from begging them to let her out, to give her a chance to prove she could control it. "I'm still me. You were never one of us." Marcus had looked away, couldn't meet her eyes. "Your mother. She came to us 18 years ago. Pregnant, dying. She begged us to take you, to raise you as our own. She said you'd be normal, that the bloodline had been diluted enough that you'd just be a regular Omega." "My mother?" Sarah had never known her mother. Had been told she died in childbirth. She lied. Marcus's voice had gone hard. Or maybe she believed it herself. "Either way, you're what you are, and we can't keep you. So you're going to kill me." It wasn't a question. The old laws forbid it. He'd pulled out the branding iron then, already glowing red from whatever fire they'd heated it in. "But we can make sure no pack ever accepts you. Can make sure you spend the rest of your life alone." She'd fought. Of course she'd fought. Had tried to call the silver flame again, to defend herself, to escape. But the chains had been laced with wolfsbane, and her power newly awakened, barely understood, wouldn't come. So she'd been forced to kneel there, while Marcus pressed hot iron to her skin and spoke the words of rejection. "By the authority of the Crescent Moon Pack, I mark you as unwanted, as cast out. May no pack ever claim you. May no wolf ever call you kin. May you walk the earth alone until your dying breath." The brand had seared not just her flesh, but something deeper. Her wolf had howled in agony, feeling the pack bonds snap one by one like threads being cut, and then they dumped her in the wastelands. Left her bleeding and broken in the snow, miles from any settlement, expecting nature to finish what they'd started. They'd underestimated her stubbornness. Or maybe they'd underestimated what a person could endure when they had nothing left to lose. Sarah sat up in Cale's bed, pressing her palms against her eyes, trying to stop the tears that threatened to fall. 3 years. 3 years of running. Of hiding in caves and abandoned dens. Of eating whatever she could scavenge roots, half-frozen berries, carrion when she was desperate enough. Of fighting off rogues who thought a lone wolf was easy prey. She'd learned to bury the silver flame so deep it barely flickered. Had taught herself to be small, quiet, forgettable. Had convinced herself that Marcus was right, that she was an abomination. Something wrong. Something that didn't deserve to exist. And she'd survived. Barely. But she'd survived. Until 3 weeks ago, when Cale's guards had found her half dead in a ravine, bleeding from a rogue attack that should have killed her. She remembered waking up in a warm bed, not this one, somewhere else in the palace. Clean, fed, confused. And then Cale had walked in and made his offer. 3 nights. That's all I ask. She'd thought he wanted what most alphas wanted from Omegas. Thought she understood the price of her continued survival. But this was so much worse. Because Cale didn't want her body. He wanted her power. Wanted her to be this mythical thing, this lunar Omega who could supposedly save kingdoms. Wanted her to stand beside him and face prophecies and darkness and all the things that had terrified her pack into casting her out. "I can't," she whispered into the darkness. "I can't be what he needs me to be." "Can't?" Cale's voice came from across the room, rough with exhaustion. "Or won't?" She'd thought he was asleep. Should have known better. "Does it matter?" Sarah pulled her knees to her chest, made herself small again out of habit. The result is the same. She heard him move, the sound of him standing, crossing the room. Expected him to come to the bed, but he stopped a few feet away, maintaining that careful distance. "Tell me what happened," he said quietly. "The night they rejected you. You already know. You said, 'I know the facts. I don't know the truth.'" He paused. "I don't know what it did to you." Something in his voice made her look up. In the dim light from the banked fire, she could just make out his expression. And what she saw there wasn't pity. Wasn't even sympathy. It was understanding. "It broke me," Sarah admitted. The words came out small, fragile. I was 19 and I thought I knew who I was. What I was. And in one night, all of that got ripped away. They looked at me like I was a monster, like I was something to be feared instead of loved. You're alpha, Kale said. Marcus. He cared about you before? He was like a father. The grief in her voice surprised her. She thought she'd buried that feeling long ago. He taught me to track, to read the stars. He used to call me Little Moon because I always wandered at night. She laughed, but it came out broken. Guess that was prophetic, huh? And then he branded you. Kale's voice had gone cold, dangerous, marked you like property, and threw you away. He was protecting his pack. Even now, after everything, part of her wanted to defend Marcus, wanted to believe he'd had no choice. I was a threat. If other packs found out, he was a coward. Kale moved closer, and this time he did sit on the bed, not touching her, but near enough that she could feel his warmth. Real strength isn't about protecting your own at any cost. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. Even when it's dangerous. Like you're doing with me? The words came out bitter. Bringing a rejected Omega into your palace? Your council is going to hate you for it. Let them. He said it so simply, like it was the easiest decision in the world. I've been hated before. I'll be hated again. Doesn't change what needs to be done. Sarah studied his profile in the firelight, the scar, the hard line of his jaw, the shadows under his eyes that said he carried his own weight of sleepless nights. Why? She asked. Why risk everything for someone you don't even know? Kale was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw, honest. Because 5 years ago, I watched my father burn an entire village to the ground. Men, women, children, all of them screaming. He swallowed hard. They'd been accused of harboring a lunar child. No proof, just rumors. But my father was convinced that lunar bloodlines were a threat to his power, so he made an example. Horror coiled in Sarah's stomach. You were there? I was 17. He made me watch. Said it was a lesson about what happens to those who threaten our rule. Kale's hands clenched into fists. After, when the screaming stopped, I asked him if he'd even tried to verify the rumors. He laughed and said it didn't matter. That fear was more effective than facts. That's when you knew, Sarah said softly. That you had to be different. That's when I knew I'd kill him if I got the chance. Kale's smile was grim. Took me 3 more years, but I kept my promise. The admission should have scared her, should have reminded her that she was sitting in a room with a man who'd committed patricide. Instead, it made him seem more human. So when you heard rumors of a lunar Omega in the wastelands, Sarah connected the pieces. I had to find you, had to know if you were real. He finally looked at her, and his eyes held something that looked like desperation. Had to make sure that if you existed, you'd be protected this time. That what happened to that village would never happen again. You want to protect me. The idea was foreign, uncomfortable. But you also want to use me. The prophecy. Forget the prophecy. Kale's voice was fierce. I don't care about ancient predictions or destiny. I care about keeping you alive. Everything else. We'll figure it out. Together, if you're willing. Together. The word hung between them, heavy with possibility. Sarah thought about the 3 years she'd spent alone. Thought about what it had cost her, not just physically, but the parts of herself she'd had to cut away, just to survive. The trust. The hope. The belief that she was worth saving. I don't know how to be what you need, she whispered. I don't know how to control this thing inside me. Most days I can barely keep it from consuming me entirely. Then we'll learn. Kale shifted slightly, and his hand moved toward hers, hovering, asking permission. After a heartbeat, Sarah took it. The silver flame flickered between their palms, warm but not burning. Like a greeting. Like recognition. I'm still leaving after 3 nights, she said. But the words lacked conviction. If that's what you want. Kale's thumb brushed across her knuckles. But before you go, let me show you something. Let me prove that you're not a monster. That the power inside you isn't something to fear. How? His smile was small. Sad. By teaching you to use it. To control it. To make it yours instead of letting it control you. The offer was tempting. So tempting, it terrified her. Because learning to use her power meant accepting what she was. Meant stepping into the truth instead of running from it. Meant becoming the thing her pack had feared most. Okay, Sarah heard herself say. Show me. Kale's expression transformed relief, and something that looked dangerously close to hope flooding his features. Tomorrow, he said. After you survive the court, I'll take you somewhere safe. Somewhere you can let the flame burn without fear. And tonight, you rest. He squeezed her hand once, then let go, started to stand. Kale. His name felt strange on her tongue, intimate. Why does my power react to you, to your touch? He paused, looked back at her. Because mate bonds amplify power. Whatever you are, whatever I am together, we're stronger. The flame recognizes that. I don't want a mate bond, Sarah said quickly. I don't want to belong to anyone. Good. His answer surprised her. I don't want you to belong to me either. I want you to belong to yourself. The bond. If it forms, but it'll be your choice. Every step of the way. The words should have reassured her. Instead, they made her chest ache with something that felt dangerously close to longing. Kale returned to his chair. The distance between them felt both necessary and unbearable. Sarah lay back down, pulled the silk sheets up to her chin. Outside, the moon had moved lower in the sky, painting everything in shades of silver and shadow. She closed her eyes. And for the first time in 3 years, let herself imagine what it might be like. To be seen, to be powerful, to stand in the light, instead of cowering in darkness. To be free, not because someone gave her permission, but because she claimed it for herself. The silver flame pulsed once, gently, like a heartbeat, and Sarah finally, slept. Chapter 4. Dawn came too quickly. Sarah woke to find Kale already gone, the chair by the window empty except for a folded piece of parchment. She sat up, rubbing sleep from her eyes, real sleep, the kind she hadn't experienced in years. Her body ached less. The constant tension in her shoulders had eased slightly. The silver flame hummed contentedly beneath her sternum, like it was pleased with itself. She reached for the note. The court convenes at midday. Mira will help you prepare. After, if you survive their judgment, I'll take you to the Whisperwood. Trust me. Kay. Trust. Such a small word. Such an impossible ask. Sarah folded the note and tucked it under the pillow, some irrational part of her wanting to keep it close. Then she rose, padding barefoot across the cold floor to where Mira had left the fresh clothes last night. A dress. Deep forest green, simple but well made. Soft leather boots. A cloak lined with fur. Real clothes. The kind that said person instead of prey. She was halfway dressed when Mira knocked and entered without waiting for permission. The older woman carried a tray laden with food, fresh bread, honey, sliced fruit, cheese that smelled rich and sharp. Eat, Mira commanded, setting the tray on a small table. You'll need your strength. Sarah's stomach growled traitorously. She couldn't remember the last time she'd seen food like this. In the wastelands, she'd survived on scraps. On things that barely qualified as edible. She sat and forced herself to eat slowly, even though every instinct screamed at her to devour it all before someone could take it away. Mira watched her with those sharp, assessing eyes. The king told me what you are. Sarah's hand froze halfway to her mouth. He what? Don't worry. I've known Kale since he was a boy. His secrets are safe with me. Mira moved behind her, began working on Sarah's hair, untangling the mess, braiding it with practiced efficiency. A lunar omega. I thought they were just stories my grandmother told to scare children into behaving. They are just stories. Sarah muttered. I'm just broken. A mistake. Mistakes don't survive 3 years in the wastelands alone. Mira's fingers were gentle despite her no-nonsense tone. Mistakes don't carry moon flame in their veins. You're many things, girl, but broken isn't one of them. The words landed like stones in still water, creating ripples Sarah couldn't quite contain. The court, she said, changing the subject. What should I expect? Mira's expression darkened. Vipers dressed in silk. The King's Council is made up of the oldest bloodlines in the kingdom, Alphas, who remember when Kale's father ruled with an iron fist. They're not pleased that Kale's been trying to reform things, making laws about Omega rights, forbidding the culling of weaker wolves. They see him as soft. And me? You're proof that he's willing to break tradition, to bring in an outsider, a rejected Omega, and give her sanctuary. Mira finished the braid, stepped back to examine her work. They'll test you, try to provoke you, See if they can make you crack. Why would Kale put me through that? Because hiding you would be worse. Mira met her eyes in the mirror that hung on the wall. It would make you seem like a guilty secret. Something shameful. This way, he's claiming you openly. Saying you're under his protection, that anyone who wants to hurt you will have to go through him first. The thought made Sarah's chest tighten with something she refused to name. What if I can't control it? She whispered. The flame. What if they push me and I lose control and then you burn them? Mira's smile was sharp. Might do some of them good to remember that power doesn't always come in the expected package. The council chamber was designed to intimidate. Sarah stood at the entrance, Kale at her side, staring at a room that screamed wealth and power. Vaulted ceilings carved with scenes of ancient hunts, pillars of black marble veined with silver, a long table where 12 alphas sat like judges, their eyes tracking her every movement. At the head of the table sat an empty throne. Kale's seat. Ready? He murmured, low enough that only she could hear. No, she would never be ready for this. Yes, she lied. Kale's hand brushed the small of her back, a brief touch, grounding, and then he was moving forward with the kind of confidence that came from birthright and bloodshed. Sarah followed, keeping her spine straight, her chin up. The way Mira had taught her in the brief minutes before they'd left the chamber. Don't look at the floor, don't apologize for existing. You belong here because he says you do, and he's the king. The alphas watched her approach with varying degrees of interest and hostility. She catalogued them quickly, the gray-haired woman at the far end with calculating eyes, the younger man with a sneer twisting his mouth, the scarred warrior who looked like he'd seen too many battles, the elegant female alpha, who examined her like she was an interesting specimen under glass. Kale took his seat, gestured for Sarah to stand beside him. Not behind, not in a position of servitude. Beside. The message was clear. My king. The gray-haired woman spoke first, her voice cold and clipped. You called this emergency session. We're listening. Counselor Vera. Kale's tone was pleasant, but there was steel underneath. Thank you all for coming on short notice. I want to introduce you to Sarah. She'll be staying in the palace under my personal protection. Silence, heavy and hostile. Then the younger man with the sneer, Counselor Dane. Sarah remembered from Mira's brief descriptions, leaned forward. A rejected Omega. He said it like a curse. You're sheltering a wolf that was cast out by her own pack. Why? Because I choose to. Kale's response was simple. Final. That's not an answer. The elegant female alpha counselor Lyra steepled her fingers. Rejected wolves carry shame. Bad blood. It's one thing to offer charity, but bringing her into your private chambers, making her stand at your right hand like she has status? Her eyes narrowed. What game are you playing? No game. Kale's voice remained level. Sarah is here because she deserves protection, because the circumstances of her rejection were questionable. And because I say so. Questionable how? Vera demanded. Was there an injustice? Was her rejection not valid under pack law? Sarah's hand moved unconsciously to her collarbone. The brand burned under their scrutiny. Her rejection was legal, Kale admitted. But not just. Justice and law aren't always the same thing, the scarred warrior Counselor Thorne rumbled. His eyes met Sarah's, and she saw something unexpected there. Curiosity, not hostility. Still. The girl's been marked. That means something. It's not our place to overturn another pack's judgment. I'm not overturning anything. Kale's patience was wearing thin. Sarah could hear it in the slight edge creeping into his voice. I'm offering sanctuary. Last I checked, that was within my authority as king. Authority you've been using quite liberally lately, Dane shot back. First the Omega protection laws. Then forbidding the blood trials. Now this. You're changing too much too fast. And the packs are restless. The packs were restless under my father's rule too. Kale's smile was razor sharp. At least now they're restless for better reasons. Your father kept order, Vera said coldly. He was strong, decisive. He didn't let sentiment cloud his judgment. My father was a tyrant. Kale's voice dropped to something dangerous. He burned villages on suspicion alone, killed children to prove a point. If that's the kind of strength you're nostalgic for, counselor, perhaps you're sitting at the wrong table. The temperature in the room plummeted. Vera's eyes flashed. Careful, my king. We supported your claim to the throne. That support can be withdrawn. Is that a threat? Kale leaned forward, and the predator in him rose to the surface. Because if it is, I'd suggest you choose your next words very carefully. Sarah's heart hammered. This was spinning out of control. They were using her as a weapon against Kale, trying to make him look weak, May I speak? The words left her mouth before she could stop them. Every head turned. 12 pairs of eyes fixed on her with varying degrees of surprise. Kale looked at her, one eyebrow raised, then nodded slowly. Sarah took a breath, channeled every ounce of strength she'd developed over 3 years of survival. You're right, she said, meeting Vera's gaze directly. I was rejected, branded, cast out. My own alpha looked at me like I was something to be destroyed. She let the pain bleed into her voice, made them hear it. I spent 3 years alone in the wastelands, starving, freezing, fighting just to see another sunrise. Then why come here? Lyra asked, and there was genuine curiosity in her tone now. Why not stay hidden? Why walk into the heart of another pack's territory? Because I was dying, simple truth. And when the king's guards found me, when he offered me a chance not to earn my place, not to prove my worth, but just to live, I took it. Because I'm tired of apologizing for existing. The chamber was utterly silent. You want to know what game the king is playing? Sarah continued, and she felt the silver flames stirring, lending her confidence she didn't quite feel. There is no game. He's just decent. He saw someone in need and he helped. If that makes him weak in your eyes, then maybe your definition of strength needs examining. Dane's sneer had faded. Thorn was watching her with open interest now. Vera's expression remained cold, but something flickered in her eyes. Calculation. Bold words, the counselor said finally. For someone with no status, no pack, no power. The silver flame roared. Sarah felt it surge up from her core, felt it press against her skin from the inside, demanding release. She could show them, could prove that she had more power than they could imagine. Could. Kale's hand closed over hers where it rested on the table. Gently. A reminder. Control. Choice. Sarah breathed. Let the flame settle. Held Vera's gaze. You're right, she said quietly. I have no status, no pack. But I have something you don't seem to value very highly. I have nothing left to lose. And that, counselor, makes me more dangerous than you think. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Thorn laughed, a booming sound that broke the tension like shattering ice. I like her, he announced. She's got spine, more than half the wolves in this kingdom. He looked at Kale. Fine. She can stay, under your protection. But if she causes trouble, it's on your head. Agreed, Kale said immediately. I'm not finished. Vera's voice cut through the room like a blade. If she stays, she follows our laws, our customs. That means participating in the moonrise ceremony in 3 days. Sarah felt Kale tense beside her. That's not necessary. It's traditional. Lyra's smile was thin. Any wolf under the king's protection must prove their loyalty before the full moon. Surely you're not suggesting we abandon tradition, my king. Not after you've been so progressive with your other reforms. It was a trap. Sarah could see it in their faces. Whatever this moonrise ceremony was, it was designed to expose her, to force her hand. What does it involve? She asked. A simple ritual, Vera said, but her smile was anything but simple. You'll stand before the assembled packs at moonrise. Shift into your wolf form, prove that you're still wolf, still worthy of sanctuary. Shift. The silver flame pulsed violently, because if she shifted, they'd would see the white fur and silver eyes and moon flame that marked her as something other, something dangerous. They knew. Somehow, they suspected. And this was their way of forcing the truth into the light. The ceremony is voluntary, Kale said firmly. She doesn't have to. I'll do it. Sarah squeezed his hand, silencing him. Met Vera's cold eyes. 3 days. Moonrise. I'll be there. Because running would only confirm their suspicions. Would make Kale look weak. Would undo everything he'd risked by bringing her here. And because deep down, beneath the fear, part of her was tired of hiding. The council members exchanged glances. Vera's smile grew. Excellent, she purred. We look forward to it. Kale dismissed the council shortly after, his jaw tight with suppressed fury. The moment the chamber doors closed behind them, he turned to Sarah. You shouldn't have agreed to that. I didn't have a choice. She was shaking now, the adrenaline crashing. They were going to push until I chose between you and the throne. Kale's hands curled into fists. That's what they want. They want me to fail. Want to prove I'm not fit to rule. Then we don't let them win. Sarah forced steel into her voice. 3 days. You said you'd teach me to control the flame. So teach me. Help me learn to shift without losing control. Sarah. He looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw real fear in his eyes. When you shift in front of the packs, when they see what you really are, they'll try to kill me. She finished the thought he couldn't voice. I know. I won't let them. You might not have a choice. The words hung between them, heavy with truth. Then Kale's expression hardened into something that looked like determination. Or maybe desperation. Come with me, he said. Now. We're going to the Whisperwood. But, no arguments. He was already moving, pulling her along with him through corridors she didn't recognize. If we only have 3 days, I'm not wasting another minute. They descended stairs that seemed to go on forever, moving deeper into the palace's foundation. The air grew colder, damper, and then they emerged into a courtyard Sarah hadn't known existed, a hidden garden, surrounded by walls so high she could barely see the sky. In the center stood a gate, not wood or iron, but something that looked like twisted moonlight. Silver and shimmering and wrong in a way that made her wolf whimper. What is that? Sarah whispered. A portal. Kale approached it cautiously, placed his hand against the shimmering surface. It leads to the Whisperwood, the sacred forest where the first wolves were born, where the old magic still lives. And you want to take me there? I want to take you somewhere you can be what you are without fear. He looked back at her, and his eyes held something that looked like hope. Somewhere the prophecy was written, where answers might still exist. Sarah stared at the gate, at the promise of secrets and truth, and maybe just maybe understanding. If I go through that, she said slowly, there's no going back, is there? No more pretending I'm just a broken Omega. No, Kale agreed. No more pretending. The silver flame pulsed. Eager, ready. Sarah thought about the council's cold eyes. About 3 days until moonrise. About a lifetime spent running from what she was. Then she thought about Kale's words from last night. Time to be seen. She took his hand. Felt the flame leap between their palms like a greeting. Show me, she said. And together, they stepped through the gate into legend. Chapter 5. The Whisperwood was alive. That was Sarah's first thought, as they stepped through the shimmering gate and into a forest that shouldn't exist. The air itself seemed to breathe thick with magic so old it made her bones ache with recognition. Trees towered overhead, their bark silver white, their leaves glowing softly like captured starlight. And the whispers. Gods. The whispers. Voices without bodies, speaking in languages she didn't know but somehow understood. Fragments of conversations, prayers, warnings that drifted through the air like smoke. The last one who came here burned. Moon's daughter returns. Too late. Always too late. Sarah stumbled, overwhelmed. Kale steadied her, his hand firm at her elbow. Don't listen to all of them, he said quietly. The forest speaks to everyone differently. It shows you what you need to see. Or what you fear most. Sometimes both. You've been here before. It wasn't a question. Once, when I was 16. His expression grew distant. My father brought me, wanted to show me the old temple, to teach me about the prophecies our bloodline was meant to guard. I think he hoped it would make me more like him, cruel, ambitious, but it didn't. No. Kale's smile was sad. It showed me what we'd lost, what he'd destroyed in his quest for absolute power. And I swore that night that I'd be different. The silver flame pulsed gently in Sarah's chest, responding to something in the forest. A call. An invitation. They walked deeper into the Whisperwood, following a path that seemed to appear beneath their feet. Moss glowed softly in the shadows. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, but the sound was wrong, layered, like 10 voices speaking at once. Spirit wolves, Kale explained, seeing her tension. The guardians of this place, they won't hurt us. Probably. Probably? They're unpredictable, ancient. They answer to the forest, not to any pack or alpha. He paused, listening to something she couldn't hear. But they know we're here, and they're curious. They emerged into a clearing, and Sarah's breath caught. In the center stood ruins what must have been a temple once, before time and weather had claimed it. Pillars of white stone carved with symbols that hurt to look at directly. An altar at the heart of it all, still intact, its surface smooth and dark as obsidian, and everywhere silver light pulsed like a heartbeat. "This is where the first lunar omega was blessed," Kale said softly. 200 years ago. A wolf named Thalia stood at that altar and accepted the moon's gift, became something more than wolf, more than human, became a bridge between the mortal world and the divine. Sarah moved toward the altar as if pulled by invisible strings. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. "Daughter of flame, marked by rejection. Will she rise or will she burn?" Her hand touched the altar's surface, and the world exploded into light. Vision, memory, prophecy. All three at once. She saw Thalia, a woman with white hair and silver eyes, standing where Sarah stood now. Saw her raise her arms as moonlight poured down. Saw her body transform into pure flame, silver and radiant and terrible, and she heard a voice. Ancient, feminine, endless as the night sky. "To you I give the moon's fire. Use it to protect, to heal, to unite the scattered packs beneath one banner. But know this, child, the flame that warms can also consume. Your heart will choose its path. Choose wisely, or watch your world burn." The vision shifted, changed. A man stood beside Thalia, tall, scarred, with eyes that held the same golden fire Kale's did, an alpha king from centuries past. They were bound together not just by choice, but by something deeper. Destiny, fate, love that had grown from ashes and ash. Together, they were unstoppable, light and shadow, fire and earth. But then the scene darkened, twisted. She saw Thalia standing alone in a field of corpses. Saw her flame burning out of control, consuming everything in its path. Saw her screaming as the fire devoured the very people she'd sworn to protect. Saw her alpha king driving a blade through her heart to stop the destruction, and heard his voice, broken with grief. "Forgive me, beloved. But I cannot let you destroy the world we built." The vision shattered. Sarah came back to herself on her knees, gasping. Kale was beside her, his hands on her shoulders, saying her name over and over. "I saw her," Sarah managed. "Thalia, I saw what happened." "What did you see?" His voice was urgent. "Everything." Tears streamed down her face. The blessing, the power, and then, the end. She lost control, burned everything. Her mate had to kill her to stop it. Kale's face went pale. The prophecy never mentions that part, because it's the part everyone wants to forget. Sarah looked up at the sky, at the canopy of silver leaves that filtered moonlight into something holy. They remember the legend of the powerful lunar omega who united the packs. They don't talk about how she died, how her own power destroyed her. That won't happen to you. You don't know that. She pulled away from him, stood on shaking legs. "The flame inside me, Kale. I can barely control it on a good day. What happens when I shift in front of the packs? When I'm exposed and afraid and they're all watching? What if I lose control like she did? Then I'll be there." He rose too, moved to stand in front of her. "And I won't let it consume you, I swear it. Your ancestor made the same promise." Sarah's voice cracked. "And he still had to kill her. I'm not him." Kale cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "And you're not Thalia. We know what happened to her. We can learn from it. We can be different." "How?" The question came out small, broken. "How do I control something that's bigger than me? Something that's been building for 3 years while I tried to bury it? By accepting it." His thumbs brushed away her tears. "By stopping fighting against it and learning to work with it instead. The flame is part of you, Sarah. Not a curse, not a disease. Just you." She wanted to believe him, wanted it so desperately it hurt. But fear was a powerful thing, and she'd spent too long being afraid. "Show me," she whispered. "Show me how to control it." Kale nodded, stepped back, gave her space. "First, you need to shift," he said. "Not into your wolf form, not yet. Just let the flame come. Don't push it down. Don't fight it. Just let it exist." Sarah closed her eyes, took a breath, and lowered the walls she'd spent 3 years building. The silver flame roared to life, eager, hungry, finally free. It poured out of her like water through a broken dam, cascading across her skin in waves of liquid light. She felt it in every cell, every breath, power so vast and ancient it should have terrified her. But instead, it felt like coming home. Good. Kale's voice was steady, grounding. Now shape it. Don't let it just burn, give it purpose. Intent. Make it do what you want. She tried. Pushed against the flame with her will, tried to mold it, control it. It pushed back. Hard. The fire surged higher, hotter, and suddenly she was burning not physically, but inside, like the flame was consuming her from the core outward. Too much. It was too much. Sarah! Kale's shout cut through her panic. Don't fight it, work with it. But she couldn't. The flame was alive, wild, and it wanted out. Wanted to burn the forest, the temple, the whole damn world. A howl split the air. Not Kale. Not her. Something else. Sarah's eyes snapped open just as shapes materialized from the shadows. Wolves. Dozens of them. But not spirit guardians, these were real. Flesh and blood. With eyes that gleamed with hostility and teeth bared in snarls. At their head stood a massive black wolf, larger than any she'd seen. Alpha-born. Powerful. And behind them, stepping into the clearing in human form, was Counselor Vera. I thought I might find you here, the woman said, her voice cold and satisfied. The Whisperwood, where traitors bring their secrets. Kale shifted instantly, putting himself between Sarah and the wolves. This is neutral ground, Vera. Sacred ground. You have no authority here. I have every authority to protect this kingdom from threats. Vera's eyes fixed on Syrah, on the silver flame that still danced across her skin, and she is the greatest threat we've faced in 200 years. She's under my protection. Your protection means nothing if she's what I think she is. Vera gestured, and the wolves moved closer, circling. A lunar omega. The very thing your father spent his life hunting. The very thing that destroyed kingdoms in the past. Thalia united the packs. Kale growled. She saved. She burned. Vera's voice was sharp. At the end, when her power grew too great, she burned everything she touched. And her mate had to put her down like a rabid dog. I've read the real histories, boy, not the pretty legends they tell children. Sarah's heart hammered. The flame pulsed erratically, responding to her fear, her rage. So what? She demanded. You followed us here to kill me? To prevent history from repeating? I followed you here to give you a choice. Vera's expression was cold, merciless. Leave. Now. Disappear back into the wastelands where you belong. Or stay. And I promise you the packs will tear you apart the moment you shift at the moonrise ceremony. You can't speak for the packs, Kale said. Can't I? Vera smiled. Half the council agrees with me. And I've already sent word to the surrounding territories. By tomorrow, every alpha within 100 miles will know what you're hiding. A lunar omega, unbound, untrained, dangerous. You had no right. I had every right. Vera's composure cracked. Your father was a monster, yes. But at least he understood that some threats are too great to ignore. You're young, idealistic. You think you can change centuries of tradition, with pretty words and progressive laws. But the old ways exist for a reason. They keep us safe. They keep you in power, Sarah said quietly. That's what this is really about, isn't it? You're afraid. Not of what I might do, but of what I represent. Change. Evolution. A world where omegas aren't disposable. Vera's eyes flashed. I'm afraid of watching this kingdom burn because a foolish boy king fell in love with a pretty tragedy. The words hit like physical blows. Love. She'd said love. Sarah glanced at Kale, saw his jaw clench, saw something in his eyes that might have been confirmation or might have been denial. Last chance, Vera said. Leave, and I'll tell the packs it was a false alarm. That you were just a rejected omega with delusions of grandeur. Stay, and you'll have to face them all. Every alpha, every warrior, every wolf who remembers what happened last time. The silver flame roared inside Sarah's chest, begging to be released, begging to fight. But Kale's words echoed in her mind. Control. Choice. She could run. Could disappear again. Could spend the rest of her life hiding. But at least she'd be alive. Or she could stay. Could face the packs. Could prove that she wasn't, Thalia, wasn't doomed to repeat history's mistakes. Could burn, just like the prophecy predicted. Sarah looked at Kale. At the man who'd given her sanctuary when he had no reason to. Who'd looked at her broken pieces and seen something worth protecting. Who might be in love with her. And gods. Wasn't that terrifying? Then she looked at Vera. At the wolves surrounding them with hunger in their eyes. And she made her choice. I'm staying, Sarah said. Her voice didn't shake. The flame steadied, responding to her resolve. 3 days. Moonrise. I'll shift in front of the packs. And I'll show them that being powerful doesn't mean being destructive. That being different doesn't mean being dangerous. You're a fool, Vera said flatly. Maybe. Sarah smiled, and it felt like baring teeth. But I'm a fool who's tired of running. Vera studied her for a long moment. Then nodded. Once, sharp and final. So be it, she gestured to her wolves. 3 days, girl. Pray to whatever gods you believe in. Because when moonrise comes, if you lose control for even a second. Her smile was razor sharp. I'll kill you myself, and your king won't be able to stop me. The wolves melted back into the forest. Vera turned and walked away without another word, leaving them alone in the clearing with the weight of her threat hanging in the air like smoke. Sarah's legs gave out. Kyle caught her, lowered them both to the ground. She was shaking violently now, the adrenaline crash hitting her all at once. She's going to turn them against us, Sarah whispered. By the time we get back to the palace, the whole kingdom will know. Let them know. Kale's arms tightened around her. Let them come. I meant what I said. I won't let anyone hurt you. Even if it means losing your throne? He pulled back just enough to look at her. And what she saw in his eyes stole her breath. Even then, he said simply. The silver flame pulsed between them. Warm, certain. And for the first time since entering the Whisperwood, Sarah felt something other than fear. She felt ready. Not ready to burn. Not ready to destroy. Ready to fight. They stayed in the clearing until sunset, Kale teaching her to channel the flame, to shape it, to make it bend to her will instead of consuming her. It was hard, painful. She failed more than she succeeded. But every small victory, every moment where the flame obeyed, where she controlled the power instead of being controlled by it, felt like reclaiming a piece of herself she thought was lost forever. When they finally stepped back through the portal, the palace was in chaos. Servants rushed past without acknowledging them. Guards stood at every corner, weapons drawn, and from somewhere deeper in the building, she could hear raised voices, arguing. Mira appeared from a side corridor, her face grave. It started, she said without preamble. Vera returned an hour ago. She's called an emergency session of the full council, not just the king's advisors, but representatives from every major pack in the kingdom. They're demanding answers. How many? Kale asked. 50 alphas. Maybe more by morning. Mira's eyes found Sarah's. They want to see her. Want to judge for themselves if she's a threat. Then they'll see me, Sarah said, surprising herself with the steadiness in her voice. At the moonrise ceremony. Not before. That might not be your choice to make. Mira looked at Kale. They're calling for your resignation. Saying you've become a liability. That you're putting personal feelings above the kingdom's safety. Kale's expression went cold. Hard. Let them call for whatever they want. I'm still king. And I'm not abandoning her, even if it costs you everything? Mira asked softly. He didn't hesitate. Even then, the words hung in the air, heavy with promise and consequence. Sarah thought about Thalia. About the Alpha King who'd loved her enough to build a kingdom with her, and who'd loved his people enough to end her when the flame became too much. Wondered which love was stronger, which love would win. In 3 days, they'd have their answer. The moon rose outside the windows, full and bright and merciless. Watching, waiting, judging. Chapter 6. The palace felt like a battlefield waiting to happen. Sarah could hear them, the visiting alphas, prowling the corridors below Kale's chambers. Their voices drifted up through stone and wood, debates that turned to arguments that turned to threats. They'd been arriving all evening, summoned by Vera's message, drawn by curiosity or fear, or the simple desire to see the king brought low. She stood at the window, watching the moon climb higher. 2 more nights, until she had to face them all. Behind her, a fire crackled in the hearth. Kale had insisted on building it himself, dismissing the servants, creating a pocket of privacy in a palace suddenly full of enemies. You should eat something, he said quietly. Sarah glanced at the untouched tray on the table. Fresh venison, roasted vegetables, bread still warm from the ovens. Her stomach growled traitorously, but the thought of food made her nauseous. "I'm not hungry." "Liar." But there was no judgment in his voice, just understanding. She heard him move closer, felt his presence at her back like a physical thing. Not touching. Never touching without permission, but close enough that she could feel his warmth, could smell pine and smoke and something uniquely him. "Tell me about your family," Sarah said suddenly. Needed to think about anything except the wolves gathering below, the ceremony looming ahead. "Your real family, before you were king." Cale was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "I had a sister." Had. Past tense. The word landed heavy. "Older or younger?" "Younger, by 2 years." His voice went soft, distant. "Elena. She was everything I wasn't. Kind, gentle. She used to cry when she saw injured animals, would nurse them back to health in secret because our father said compassion was weakness." Sarah turned to face him. Saw the grief etched into every line of his face. "What happened to her?" "My father happened." Cale moved to the fire, stared into the flames like they held answers. "When I was 18, Elena fell in love. A beta from a smaller pack. Good man. Honorable. But his bloodline wasn't pure enough for my father's ambitions, so he forbade the match. Told Elena she'd marry an alpha from the Northern Territories, unite the kingdoms through blood. But she refused. She refused." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Gods. She was brave. Stood in front of the entire court and told him no. Said she'd rather die than marry someone she didn't love." Sarah's breath caught. "Cale. He killed her lover first. Had him executed for crimes against the crown. Made Elena watch." Cale's hands clenched into fists. Thought it would break her. Make her compliant. But Elena. She just looked at our father with these cold, dead eyes and said, "You've made me a murderer's daughter. I'll never forgive you." What did she do? Walked out of the palace that night. Just walked. No supplies, no plan. By the time I realized she was gone and went after her, it was too late. His voice cracked. "I found her 3 days later at the edge of the wastelands. She'd shifted into her wolf and run until her body gave out. Died alone in the snow." Tears burned Sarah's eyes. "I'm sorry. That was 5 years ago." Cale finally looked at her, and his eyes held an ocean of pain. "My father didn't even mourn her, just declared it a tragic accident and moved on. That's when I started planning, started gathering allies, started building the case for why he needed to be removed from power. And when you finally did it, I felt nothing. The admission was raw, honest. I thought killing him would feel like justice, like I was avenging Elena. But when I drove that blade through his heart, all I felt was empty, because it didn't bring her back, didn't undo any of the damage he'd caused." Sarah moved to him without thinking, placed her hand over his where it rested on the mantel. The silver flame flickered between their palms, gentle this time, comforting. "Your sister would be proud of you," she said softly. "The kingdom you're trying to build, one where omegas have rights, where wolves can choose their own mates, where compassion isn't weakness, that's her legacy. You're making sure her death meant something." Cale's fingers laced through hers, held tight. "I see her in you sometimes," he admitted. "That same stubborn courage. That refusal to be broken even when the world demands it. It's part of why I can't." He stopped, swallowed hard. "Part of why I need you to survive this." The words hung between them, heavy with things unsaid. "Vera called you foolish," Sarah whispered. "Said you fell in love with a pretty tragedy. Vera doesn't know what she's talking about, doesn't she?" Sarah looked up at him, studied the sharp planes of his face in the firelight. "Because from where I'm standing, it feels like you're risking everything for someone you barely know. And I need to understand why. Need to know if this is really about the prophecy, or if it's about something else." Cale's jaw tightened. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Just stood there, his hand warm in hers, the fire painting shadows across his scarred face. Then, finally, "Do you know what a mate bond feels like?" The question caught her off guard. "No, I've never. It's like drowning and breathing for the first time, all at once." His thumb brushed across her knuckles, sending sparks racing up her arm. "It's feeling complete in a way you didn't know you were broken. It's looking at someone and thinking, yes, you. Always you. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. Cale. I felt it the moment I saw you in those woods. His voice was rough. Raw. You were half dead, covered in blood, fighting off rogues with nothing but rage and will. And something in my soul just knew. This was it. This was her, the one I'd been searching for without knowing I was searching. That's not. She tried to pull away, but he held firm. I'm not telling you this to pressure you, Cale said quickly. I'm telling you because you deserve the truth. Yes, the prophecy matters. Yes, your power could change everything, but that's not why I'm risking my throne. I'm doing it because the thought of losing you, of watching you walk away, or worse, watching them destroy you, it feels like dying, and I've already lost too many people I care about. The admission stripped away every defense Sarah had built. I can't be your sister, she whispered. Can't replace what you lost. I don't want you to. His free hand came up, cupped her face with a gentleness that made her chest ache. I want you to be you. Difficult and stubborn and so damn brave it terrifies me. I want you to choose to stay because you want to, not because you feel obligated or because some ancient prophecy says we're supposed to be together. And if I can't? The question hurt to ask. If I'm too broken, too damaged, too afraid to be what you need, then I'll accept it. But his eyes told a different story. But I don't think you're as broken as you believe. I think you're healing, growing, becoming exactly who you were always meant to be. The silver flame pulsed between them, warm and insistent, like it agreed with him, like it had been waiting for her to hear those words her entire life. Sarah thought about her old alpha. About Marcus, looking at her with disgust and calling her an abomination. About 3 years of believing she was fundamentally wrong, fundamentally unworthy of love or belonging, or basic dignity. And here was Cale, looking at her like she was something precious, something worth fighting for, worth dying for. It should have felt like pressure, like an obligation she couldn't fulfill. Instead, it felt like permission, permission to want something for herself, permission to believe she deserved more than just survival. I'm terrified, she admitted, of the ceremony, of losing control, of becoming like Thalia and destroying everything. I know, and I'm terrified of this. She gestured between them, of whatever this is becoming, because everyone I've ever trusted has hurt me, and if you turned out to be like them, I won't. Cale's voice was fierce. Final. I can't promise I'll never hurt you. Can't promise I'll always make the right choices, but I can promise I'll never reject you, never abandon you, never make you feel like you're something to be ashamed of. The words cracked something open inside her chest. Before she could think better of it, before fear could stop her, Sarah rose on her toes and kissed him. It was brief, tentative, just a brush of lips that tasted like hope and terror and possibility. But the moment their mouths met, the silver flame exploded, not burning, not destroying, just alive, cascading across both their skin in waves of liquid light, binding them together in fire that felt like coming home. Cale made a sound low in his throat, his arms coming around her, pulling her closer. The kiss deepened, turned hungry, desperate, like they were both drowning and this was air. The flame sang between them, recognizing something Sarah wasn't ready to name. Mate, mine, ours. She broke away, gasping, pressing her forehead against his chest. The flame retreated slowly, reluctantly, leaving them both shaking. I can't, she whispered. Not yet. I need time. Need to know I'm choosing this because I want to, not because the flame wants me to. I know. Cale's hand stroked through her hair, gentle, grounding. We have time. 2 days. Then 2 days. He pulled back just enough to look at her. But know this, Sarah. Whatever happens at the ceremony, whether you stay or go, whether the bond forms or not, you'll always have a choice. Always have my protection. Always have me, if you want it. The offer hung in the air between them, terrifying and tempting in equal measure. Sarah thought about saying yes. Thought about leaning into this connection, into the mate bond that was clearly forming whether she was ready or not. But she'd spent 3 years having her choices stolen. Wasn't about to give up her agency now, even for something that felt this right. Ask me again, she said finally. After the ceremony. After I've proven I can control the flame. After I know I'm not going to lose myself to the power. And if you do lose control? Kale asked quietly. If the worst happens? Sarah met his eyes, saw the love there, raw and unconditional, saw the determination, saw the man who'd killed his own father to build a better world. Then you do what needs to be done, she said. Like your ancestor did with Thalia. You stop me. Whatever it takes. Pain flashed across Kale's face. Sarah, promise me. She gripped his shirt, held his gaze. Promise me you won't let me destroy everything you've built. That you'll choose the kingdom over me if it comes to that. I can't. Promise me, Kale. Her voice broke. Because if you can't, if you'd really let the world burn just to keep me alive, then I need to leave now. Before this gets any deeper. Before I care too much to make the right choice myself. The silence stretched between them, taut and terrible. Then Kale closed his eyes, nodded once, sharp and final. I promise, he said, and the words sounded like they were killing him. If it comes to that, if you're about to destroy everything, I'll stop you. Even if it destroys me too. The admission should have brought relief. Should have made her feel safer, knowing he'd do the right thing, even when it was impossible. Instead, it just made her heart break for both of them. Because loving someone and being willing to kill them to save others, that was the most terrible kind of strength. The kind that left scars that never healed. The kind Elena's loss had carved into Kale's soul. Sarah leaned into him, let him hold her while the fire crackled and the moon climbed higher and the wolves below plotted their destruction. Tell me something good, she whispered against his chest. Tell me a story that doesn't end in tragedy. Kale was quiet for a moment. Then, there was a wolf who'd been running her entire life. Afraid of her own shadow, convinced she was broken beyond repair. His voice was soft, intimate, and then one day, she met a king who saw past all her scars, who looked at her fire and didn't flinch, who said, "You're not broken, you're just unfinished." Is this story about me? Sarah asked, though she already knew. Maybe. Or maybe it's about both of us. His arms tightened around her. The wolf learned to stop running, and the king learned that some things are worth risking everything for. And together, they rewrote the ending. Made it their own. How does it end? Kale pressed a kiss to the top of her head. However they choose. The words settled into her bones like a promise, like a possibility, like hope. Outside, the moon watched through the window. 2 nights from full, 2 nights until everything changed. But tonight, just for tonight, Sarah let herself believe in happy endings. Let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she could be someone worth keeping, someone worth loving, someone worth saving. The silver flame pulsed once, gently. Agreement. Or maybe just acknowledgement. And wrapped in Kale's arms, listening to his heartbeat steady and strong beneath her ear, Sarah finally felt safe enough to rest. Not sleep, not yet, but rest. And for now, that was enough. Chapter 7. Morning came with violence. Sarah woke to the sound of shattering glass, and Kale's body covering hers, shielding her from the window that had just exploded inward. Shards rained down like daggers, glittering in the early light. A rock. Someone had thrown a rock wrapped in parchment through the window. Kale moved first, rolling off her and grabbing the stone before she could fully process what had happened. His face went dark as he unfolded the message tied around it. What does it say? Sarah's voice came out rough with sleep and fear. He crumpled the parchment in his fist. Nothing that matters. Kale. It says you're a plague. The words came out flat. Dead. That you'll bring the same destruction Thalia did. That I'm a fool for protecting you. And that if I won't deal with the problem, they will. Sarah's blood ran cold. They're going to try to kill me. Before the ceremony. They're going to try. Kale's eyes blazed with fury. But they'll have to go through me first. A knock at the door made them both tense. Kale moved to answer it. One hand on the blade he kept strapped to his thigh. Mira stood in the corridor, her face grave. Behind her, Thorn, the scarred counselor from the first meeting, waited with his arms crossed. We need to talk, Thorn said without preamble. Now. Before this gets worse. They gathered in a small sitting room adjacent to Kale's chambers, safer than the main halls where ears pressed against every wall. Thorn settled into a chair with the heavy weight of a man who'd seen too many battles, while Mira stood by the door like a sentinel. Half the visiting alphas left during the night, Thorn said bluntly. Vera's been filling their heads with stories about lunar omegas burning entire territories. Showed them old texts, historical accounts of Thalia's final days. By dawn, they were convinced Sarah's existence is a death sentence for us all. And the other half? Kale asked. Staying to watch the ceremony, either to see if you're right about her, or to make sure she doesn't survive it. Thorne's eyes moved to Sarah. You should know there's talk of calling for a trial by combat. Ancient law. If an Omega's stability is in question, an Alpha can challenge them. Winner survives, loser doesn't. That law was abolished decades ago, Kale said sharply. Your father abolished it. But some of the older Alphas are arguing it was never officially removed from the books. Just ignored. Thorne shrugged. They're looking for any legal way to justify what they want to do, which is murder me. Sarah kept her voice steady. Let's call it what it is. Yes. Thorne agreed. And she appreciated his honesty at least. They want you dead. Or gone. And they're willing to risk civil war to make it happen. Then we cancel the ceremony, Mira said. Get her out of the palace tonight. Smuggle her to the border. No. Sarah stood, moved to the window, the intact one, and stared out at the kingdom bathed in morning light. Running just proves them right. Proves I'm too dangerous to exist. And it makes Kale look weak. Better weak than dead, Mira shot back. I'm not going to die. Sarah turned to face them, and the silver flame pulsed beneath her skin, visible now, glowing softly through her clothes. Kale taught me control yesterday. I can hold the flame. Shape it. I just need more practice. One day of practice isn't enough, Thorne said, not unkindly. Lunar Omegas train for years to master their power. You're asking for a miracle, then I'll get a miracle. Sarah looked at Kale. Take me back to the Whisperwood, now. We have 2 days I'll use every hour. The forest is dangerous, Kale said, though she could see him calculating, considering. The spirit wolves don't always distinguish between friend and enemy, and if we're both gone, Vera will use it against us. Say we're hiding, plotting. Let her say whatever she wants. Sarah moved to him, placed her hand over his heart. I can't face the ceremony without being ready. Can't risk losing control in front of all those Alphas. So either we go back to the Whisperwood, or... She swallowed hard. Or you let me leave. Right now, before this destroys you. Not an option. Kale's response was immediate, absolute. Then help me become strong enough to survive. The room fell silent. Outside, she could hear the palace waking servants moving, guards changing shifts, wolves prowling the corridors looking for any excuse to violence. I'll go with you, Thorne said finally. To the Whisperwood. Someone needs to keep watch while you train. And I'm one of the few council members who still thinks this might not end in disaster. You think I can control it? Sarah asked, surprised. I think you're scared enough to try. Thorne stood, all muscle and battle-scarred pragmatism. Fear is a good motivator. Better than confidence. Confident people get careless. Scared people stay sharp. We leave within the hour, Kale decided. Mira, tell the council I'm conducting a private security assessment. That should buy us time. And if they demand to see Sarah, tell them she's under protective confinement. For her own safety. His smile was sharp. They'll like that. Makes them feel like they're in control. Mira nodded and slipped out. Thorne paused at the door, looked back at Sarah. For what it's worth, girl, I hope you prove them wrong. This kingdom could use someone who burns bright instead of just burning. Then he was gone, leaving her alone with Kale. You don't have to do this, Kale said quietly. We could run. Together. Find somewhere they'd never find us. And spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders, wondering when they'd finally catch up? Sarah shook her head. I did that for 3 years. I'm done running. Even if it kills you? Even then. She pulled him closer, rested her forehead against his. Because at least this way, I go down fighting. At least this way, I die as myself, not as something broken and afraid. Kale's arms came around her, crushing her against his chest. Like he could keep her safe through sheer will alone. I can't lose you, he whispered against her hair. I know I promised. No, I said I'd do what needs to be done. But Sarah, I don't know if I'm strong enough to keep that promise. You are. She pulled back, cupped his scarred face in her hands. You're the strongest person I've ever met, and if it comes to it, if I start to lose myself, you'll do what Elena couldn't. You'll survive. You'll keep building this better world. You'll make sure my death means something. Don't. His voice cracked. Don't talk like you're already gone. I'm not. Sarah kissed him softly, briefly. I'm right here. And I'm going to fight like hell to stay here. But I need to know you'll be okay if the worst happens. I won't be okay. The admission was raw, broken. But I'll survive, like I always do. It was the best promise either of them could make. They returned to the Whisperwood just after midday, stepping through the portal into that impossible forest where magic breathed and whispered. Thorn came through behind them, his hand on his weapon, eyes scanning the silver trees for threats. The spirit wolves appeared almost immediately. They materialized from the shadows like smoke given form, massive creatures with glowing eyes and fur that seemed woven from moonlight itself. 12 of them. 24. All watching. All waiting. They know why we're here, Kale said softly. The forest knows. The largest spirit wolf, easily the size of a horse, padded forward. Its eyes were ancient, knowing, and fixed directly on Sarah. Then it did something unexpected. It bowed. Not a submission. A recognition. The other spirit wolves followed suit, lowering their heads in a synchronized gesture that sent chills racing down Sarah's spine. What does it mean? She whispered. It means they accept you, Thorn said, his voice filled with wonder. The guardians of the old magic. They're acknowledging you as one of their own. The largest spirit wolf rose, moved closer. Sarah held her ground even as every instinct screamed at her to run. It was huge, powerful, capable of tearing her apart with a single bite. Instead, it pressed its massive head against her chest. Right over her heart. Right where the silver flame lived, and the flame responded. It poured out of her like water, cascading across her skin. But this time it didn't feel out of control. It felt right, like the spirit wolf was drawing it out deliberately, testing it, measuring it. Images flashed through her mind. Not quite visions. More like memories that weren't hers. Thalia, standing in this same forest, young and uncertain and afraid, learning to control her power, learning to transform it from weapon to gift. An Alpha King Kale's ancestor standing beside her, not controlling her, not commanding her, just present, supporting, believing. And then the darkness. The moment when fear overtook control, when Thalia's power became too much, when she burned not because she wanted to, but because she didn't know how to stop. Her mate's face, twisted with grief and determination. The blade rising, the silver flame extinguishing, and Thalia's last words. Promise me. Promise me the next one will be stronger. We'll be better. We'll survive. The spirit wolf pulled back, and Sarah gasped, coming back to herself. What did you see? Kale asked urgently. Thalia's last memory. Sarah's voice shook. She knew what was going to happen, knew she was losing control, and she asked her mate to kill her, made him promise that the next lunar Omega. She looked at Kale, tears streaming down her face. She made him promise that I would be strong enough to survive what she couldn't. Then we make sure you are. Kale's jaw set with determination. Whatever it takes. For the next hours, they trained. Kale and Thorn took turns pushing her, testing her limits, forcing her to hold the flame under pressure. They created scenarios, surprise attacks, loud noises, moments designed to trigger fear and loss of control. And each time, Sarah held. Not perfectly. She stumbled, faltered, let the flame surge too hot or sputter too low. But she didn't lose it completely, didn't let it consume her. The spirit wolves watched, silent judges. Sometimes one would step forward, would touch her with a massive paw, and she'd feel the forest's magic flowing into her, teaching her, guiding her. By sunset, she was exhausted. Her muscles screamed, her head pounded. The silver flame flickered weakly beneath her sternum. But she'd done it. Had maintained control for hours. Tomorrow we work on the shift, Kale said, offering her water from a canteen. If you can hold the flame while transforming, while your entire body is changing, I'll prove I'm not a threat, Sarah finished. You were never a threat. Thorn settled against a tree, watching the spirit wolves fade back into the forest. You were just powerful, and people fear power they can't control. They should, Sarah said quietly. I'm terrified of what I could do. What I could become. Good. Kale sat beside her, pulled her against his side. That fear will keep you careful, keep you human. They rested as darkness fell, building a small fire, eating the supplies Mira had packed. For a few hours, it was almost peaceful, just 3 wolves sitting in a sacred forest, pretending the world wasn't waiting to tear them apart. Then Thorn's head jerked up. Someone's coming. He was on his feet instantly, blade drawn. Cale rose too, pushing Sarah behind him. A figure stepped through the portal. Counselor Lyra, the elegant female alpha who'd seemed more curious than hostile during the first meeting. "Lower your weapons," she said, hands raised. "I'm not here to fight." "Then why are you here?" Cale demanded. Lyra's expression was grim. "To warn you, Vera's made her move. She's called for an emergency vote of no confidence, claims you've abandoned your duties to chase after a fantasy, that you're mentally unfit to rule." "She can't," Cale started. "She can, and she has the votes." Lyra moved closer, her eyes sad. "By morning, unless you return and face the council, they'll strip your title. Install Vera as regent until a proper successor can be chosen." "Let them try," Cale growled. "There's more." Lyra looked at Sarah. "She's also declared you an enemy of the state. Says your presence has caused civil unrest. That you're using dark magic to manipulate the king. There's a warrant for your execution. Effective immediately." The words landed like physical blows. "That's insane," Thorn said. "She has no authority." "She does now. The council granted her emergency powers. As of sunset, she's basically ruling in Cale's stead." Lyra's voice was heavy with regret. "I voted against it. But I was outvoted 11-1. Sarah felt the bottom drop out of her world. Everything they'd worked for. Everything Cale had risked. Gone. Stolen by a council that valued control over progress. "I'm sorry," Lyra said softly. "I came to give you a choice. Come back now. Face them. Maybe you can salvage this. Or..." She looked at Sarah. "Let her go. Publicly denounce her. Say she deceived you. It might be enough to save your crown." "Absolutely not." Cale's response was instant, fierce. "Then you've chosen." Lyra nodded once. "I'll stand with you when it comes to it, whatever that means." "Why?" Sarah asked. "Why risk yourself for us?" "Because I remember what it was like under the old regime. The fear, the cruelty." Lyra's smile was sad. "And because I have a daughter, Omega-born, and I want her to grow up in a world where that's not a death sentence, where she can be powerful and not have to hide." The admission hung in the air, precious and painful. "Go back," Cale told Lyra. "Tell Vera I'm returning. That I'll face the council. But on my terms." "And Sarah?" Cale's hand found hers, held tight. "Comes with me, as my chosen mate, under my full protection. If they want her, they'll have to kill me first." Lyra paled. "Cale, that's final." His voice was steel. "I'm done playing politics. Done pretending this is about anything other than fear and control. They want a fight? I'll give them one. This will end in bloodshed," Lyra warned. "Then it ends in bloodshed." Cale looked at Sarah, and his eyes held everything he'd been too afraid to say out loud. "I'm not losing her. Not to them. Not to anyone." Sarah's chest tightened. This was it. The moment where he chose her over everything. Where he proved that Vera was right, he would let the world burn rather than let her go. "You promised," she whispered. "You promised you'd choose the kingdom." "I lied." His smile was broken. "Beautiful. Or maybe I just realized the kingdom isn't worth saving if it means sacrificing the people I love to keep it." The word hung between them. Love. He'd said it. Finally said it out loud. And God's help her. Sarah felt it too. That terrifying, impossible thing that had been building since the moment he'd offered her sanctuary. "We go back together," she said. Decision made. "We face them together, and if they want to execute me, they'll have to do it in front of the entire kingdom. Make them own their cruelty." "Sarah, no more running, remember?" She squeezed his hand. "You taught me that. Time to follow my own advice." Thorn sheathed his blade. "Then we all go. And we make damn sure they remember what happens when you corner wolves who have nothing left to lose." Lyra looked between the 3 of them, this impossible alliance of a disgraced king, a rejected Omega, and a scarred warrior who'd chosen principle over politics. "You're all insane," she said. "Probably," Sarah agreed. "But at least we're insane together. They stepped back through the portal as midnight approached. One day until the full moon. One day until the ceremony. One day until everything burned or everything changed. The palace guards were waiting. Dozens of them, weapons drawn, surrounding the portal chamber, and at their head stood Vera, her expression triumphant. "Cale Thornhart," she said, her voice ringing with authority. "By order of the High Council, you are hereby stripped of your title and authority. You will surrender peacefully or be taken by force. And if I refuse?" Cale asked calmly. "Then you'll die a traitor." Vera's eyes moved to Sarah. "And your Omega dies with you." The silver flame roared to life inside Sarah's chest. Hot, hungry, begging to be released. She looked at Cale, saw the decision forming in his eyes, saw him choose. "So be it," he said, and the world exploded into chaos. Chapter 8. The first guard who lunged at Cale never reached him. Sarah moved on instinct, the silver flame erupting from her palms in a wall of liquid fire that sent the guard stumbling backward, blinded but unharmed, not burning, just stopping. "Stand down," Vera's voice cracked like a whip. "All of you, stand down. I want them taken alive." But the guards didn't listen. Or maybe they'd been given different orders in private. Either way, they surged forward as one, a wave of fur and fangs as half of them shifted mid-stride, their wolves taking over. Thorn met them first, his own shift instantaneous. One moment he was a scarred warrior, the next a massive gray wolf with battle-worn power in every movement. He took down 3 attackers before they could reach Cale and Sarah. Cale shifted too, his wolf enormous and dark as midnight, with eyes that burned gold like molten metal, an alpha in every sense of the word, dominant, powerful, terrifying. Sarah stood at the center of the chaos, the silver flame cascading across her skin like living armor. Guards bounced off it, yelping in surprise when they couldn't penetrate the barrier. She wasn't trying to hurt them, just hold them back. Just, enough. Vera's voice cut through the violence. "Sarah, if you don't surrender now, I'll order them to kill Cale first, make you watch. Is that what you want?" The threat froze her. Cale's wolf snarled, positioning himself between Sarah and Vera, but she could see the calculation in the counselor's eyes. "See the trap closing. You're a coward," Sarah said, her voice ringing clear despite the flames wreathing her body. "Hiding behind threats, behind guards. If you really believe I'm so dangerous, face me yourself." Vera's smile was cold. "I'm not a fool. I've seen what lunar omegas can do." "Have you?" Sarah took a step forward, and the guard scrambled back from the intensity of her flame. "Or have you just read old stories and convinced yourself they're truth? Because I think you're afraid, counselor. Not of what I've done, but of what I represent." "And what's that?" Vera's composure cracked slightly. "Change. Evolution. A world where omegas don't have to bow to alphas who think power is the same as worth." Sarah's flame pulsed brighter. "You're terrified that if I survive, if I prove I can control this power, it'll inspire others. Make them question why things have always been this way. Make them wonder if maybe, just maybe, the old ways need to die. The old ways keep us safe. The old ways keep you in control." Sarah's voice was fierce now, channeling every ounce of rage from 3 years in the wastelands, from 19 years of being told she was lesser. "That's what this is really about. Not my safety, not the kingdom's safety. Your power, your status. Your fear that if wolves like me are allowed to exist, you'll become irrelevant." Murmurs rippled through the guards. Some of them were lowering their weapons, uncertainty flickering across their faces. "She's manipulating you," Vera snarled. "Can't you see? This is what they do, lunar omegas. Twist your mind, make you doubt everything. I'm not twisting anything." Sarah let the flame recede slightly, just enough that they could see her face, her eyes, her humanity. "I'm just asking you to see me, really see me. Not as a threat, not as a weapon. Just as a wolf who wants to live, who wants to be free." "Is that really so terrifying?" Silence fell over the chamber. Then Lyra stepped forward, moving to stand beside Sarah. "She's right. We've let fear rule us for too long. Let old prejudices dictate who deserves life and who doesn't." "Lyra, you're making a mistake." Vera started. "Am I? Or am I finally making the right choice?" Lyra looked at the assembled guards. "My daughter is an Omega. She's 8 years old, And every day I wonder if she'll develop power like Sarah's. If one day I'll have to choose between protecting her and obeying laws written by wolves who never bothered to understand what they were condemning. More murmurs. Louder this time. A younger guard, barely 20, lowered his weapon completely. My sister was rejected by her pack last year. They said she was too weak. Threw her out with nothing. She died in the winter. His voice shook. Maybe if someone like Sarah had existed then, had shown that Omegas could be strong, my sister would still be alive. This is sedition, Vera hissed. I'll have you all tried for what? Thorn shifted back to human form, standing bloodied but unbowed. For questioning authority? For suggesting maybe we shouldn't execute someone based on fear alone? That's not sedition, counselor. That's common sense. Vera's composure shattered completely. You're all fools. She'll destroy us, just like Thalia destroyed everything she touched. Thalia lost control because she was alone, Sarah said quietly. Because her mate loved her, yes, but also feared her. Because she never learned to trust herself, to believe she could be powerful without being destructive. She looked at Kale, at his wolf standing fierce and loyal beside her. I'm not alone. And I'm not afraid anymore. She let the flame build. Let it grow until the entire chamber glowed with silver light. Let them see exactly what she was capable of. And then, with every guard watching, with Vera's face going pale with terror, Sarah controlled it, shaped it, wove it into intricate patterns that danced through the air like living things. The flame became wolves, became trees, became the moon itself, all crafted from her power and her will. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Wonder, awe, fear, but a different kind now. Not fear of a monster. Fear born of witnessing something holy. This is what I am, Sarah said, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. Not a weapon, not a curse. Just different. Just powerful in a way that scares people who think power should look a certain way. She let the flame dissipate slowly, gently, until she stood human and whole, and completely in control. So here's my offer, Counselor Vera. Call off your guards, reinstate Kale, and let me prove at tomorrow's ceremony that I'm not a threat. Let me shift in front of the entire kingdom. And if I lose control, if I become what you fear, then Kale has my permission to end me. Just like Thalia's mate did. No, Kale's voice came out as a growl. He'd shifted back to human. Was moving toward her with fury in his eyes. We're not agreeing to that. Yes, we are. Sarah met his gaze steadily. Because it's the only way this ends without bloodshed. The only way we prove I'm strong enough to survive what Thalia couldn't. And if something goes wrong, Kale demanded, if the moon affects you differently than you expect, if the pressure of performing in front of hundreds of wolves makes you lose control, then you keep your promise. She took his hands, held them tight. And you save the kingdom. Like you've always done. I hate this plan. But she could see him calculating, weighing options. Seeing that she was right. Even if it killed him to admit it. Do we have a deal? Sarah asked Vera. The counselor looked between them, looked at her guards, half of whom had completely lowered their weapons now, looking at Sarah with something that wasn't quite trust but wasn't hostility either. Fine, Vera said finally, the word like glass in her mouth. Tomorrow, moonrise, the entire kingdom as witness. You shift, you prove you can control your power. And if you fail, if I fail, I won't survive anyway. Sarah's voice was calm, final. The flame will consume me from the inside out. Either way, your problem is solved. The brutal honesty of it made several guards flinch. Then we have an accord. Vera gestured sharply, and the guards began to disperse. But know this, girl, I'll be watching. And at the first sign of instability, the first flicker of lost control, I won't wait for the king to act. I'll end you myself. I'd expect nothing less. Sarah inclined her head slightly. A gesture that wasn't quite respect but acknowledged Vera's position. The counselor swept from the chamber, taking most of the guards with her. But some stayed behind, including the young one who'd spoken about his sister. He approached hesitantly. I'm sorry, he said, for attacking you. I was just following orders. I know. Sarah offered him a small smile. It's what we're all trained to do. Follow, obey, don't question. She paused. But maybe it's time we learn to think for ourselves, to decide what's right, instead of just what's traditional. The guard nodded slowly, then backed away. leaving them alone. Lyra remained, watching Sarah with newfound respect. That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen or the most foolish. Can't it be both? Sarah asked tiredly. The adrenaline was crashing now, leaving her shaking and exhausted. Fair point. Lyra looked at Kale. Your title is still technically stripped. The council vote stands until tomorrow's ceremony. If she succeeds, I'll motion to have you reinstated. Until then, I'm just a wolf, who's loyal to someone worth protecting. Kale moved to Sarah's side, wrapped an arm around her waist when her legs threatened to give out. I can live with that. Lyra departed with a final nod, leaving just the three of them, Kale, Sarah, and Thorn. You realize, Thorn said, breaking the silence, that by making that offer, you've painted an even bigger target on your back. If Vera can find a way to make you lose control tomorrow, she will. I know. Sarah leaned into Kale's strength. Let him hold her upright. But at least this way, it's my choice. My decision. I'm not running. Not hiding. Just facing it head on. You're insane, Thorn said, but there was admiration in his voice. But I respect it. And for what it's worth, I think you're going to prove them all wrong. I hope you're right. Sarah closed her eyes, felt exhaustion pulling at her. Because if you're not, tomorrow night you'll all be cleaning up what's left of me. Don't talk like that, Kale said fiercely. But he held her tighter, like he could keep her safe through sheer determination. They made their way back to Kale's chambers, former chambers, technically, but no one stopped them. The palace felt different now, charged with tension and possibility and fear all mixed together. Inside, with the door locked and guards posted outside, Thorn had insisted Sarah finally let herself collapse, not onto the bed, onto the floor, her back against the wall, her entire body trembling with aftershocks from channeling so much power. Kale knelt beside her, his hands gentle as they checked her over for injuries. I'm fine, she assured him. Just tired. So tired. You shouldn't have made that deal. His voice was rough. Shouldn't have given them permission to kill you. What choice did I have? She opened her eyes, met his tortured gaze. Let them fight us here? Watch wolves die because they were caught between loyalty and orders? This way, at least it's clean. At least it's on my terms. You're talking about your death like it's inevitable. Maybe it is. The admission hurt. Thalia died, Kale. The most powerful lunar Omega in history couldn't survive her own power. What makes you think I can do better? Because you're not her. His hands cupped her face, forcing her to focus on him. Because you've survived things she never had to face. 3 years in the wastelands. Rejection. Starvation. Attacks. You're already stronger than she ever was. Or I'm just more stubborn. But his words warmed something cold inside her chest. Stubbornness is a kind of strength. Kale pressed his forehead to hers. And I believe in you. Even if you don't believe in yourself yet. Sarah closed her eyes, let his certainty wash over her. Wanted desperately to believe he was right. Tomorrow, she whispered. Tomorrow we find out if faith is enough. Outside, the moon climbed higher. 1 day from full. 1 day from the ceremony that would either prove she was worth saving or prove everyone's fears correct. Kale lifted her gently, carried her to the bed despite her weak protests, tucked the blankets around her like she was something precious, something worth protecting. Sleep, he commanded softly. I'll keep watch. You need rest too. I'll rest when this is over. His smile was sad. When I know you're safe. Kale. Sleep, Sarah. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. Let me have this. Let me protect you in the small ways, since you won't let me protect you in the big ones. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she didn't need protecting, but the exhaustion was too much, and his presence, solid, steady, faithful, made her feel safer than she had in years. So she slept, and dreamed of silver flames that didn't burn, of white wolves running free under moonlight, of endings that weren't tragedies, and of a scarred Alpha King who looked at her like she was the moon itself, beautiful, untouchable, worth every risk. When she woke, it would be the day of reckoning. But tonight, just for tonight, she let herself dream of survival, of victory, of love that was strong enough to withstand even the hottest flame. The silver fire pulsed once in her chest. Quiet. Content. Waiting for tomorrow, when everything would change. Chapter 9. The day of the moonrise ceremony dawned cold and merciless. Sarah woke to find Cale standing at the window, silhouetted against pale morning light. He hadn't slept, she could see it in the tension of his shoulders, in the way he held himself like he was already bracing for loss. "You're still here," he said without turning. Statement, not question. "Where else would I be?" She rose, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders against the chill, and moved to stand beside him. Below, the courtyard was transforming. Workers erected a massive platform at the center, surrounded by torches that would burn silver when lit, traditional for ceremonies involving moon magic. Beyond the palace walls, she could see them arriving. Wolves from every territory, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. All coming to witness her triumph or her destruction. "It's not too late," Cale said quietly. "We could still run. I've got horses ready, supplies. We could be at the border by nightfall. And then what? Spend our lives as exiles? Fugitives?" Sarah shook her head. "You'd lose everything you've built, everything your sister died for. I'd have you." He finally looked at her, and the rawness in his eyes stole her breath. "That would be enough." "No, it wouldn't." She took his hand, laced their fingers together. "You'd resent me eventually, hate me for making you choose between love and duty, and I'd hate myself for letting you. You don't know that." "Yes, I do." She squeezed his hand. "Because I know you, Cale. Know you're a king not just by title but by nature. You can't walk away from responsibility any more than I can walk away from what I am." He pulled her closer, buried his face in her hair. "I'm terrified. So am I." The admission came easily now. "Honest. I'm terrified I'll lose control. Terrified I'll prove Vera right. Terrified that my last sight will be your face as you drive a blade through my heart to stop me from destroying everything." "Don't." His voice cracked. "Please don't say it like that." "But that's what might happen." She pulled back, made him look at her. "And if it does, if I start to burn uncontrollably, you can't hesitate. Can't let love make you weak. Promise me." "I already promised." "Promise me again." Her hands fisted in his shirt. "Because I need to hear it one more time. Need to know that even if everything goes wrong, you'll do what needs to be done." Cale's jaw clenched. For a long moment, he said nothing, just stood there, this powerful alpha king brought to his knees by the possibility of losing someone he loved. Then, finally, "If you lose control, if you become a danger to yourself or others, I'll end it." Each word sounded like it was killing him. Quickly, painlessly. "I won't let you suffer like Thalia did. Thank you." Tears burned her eyes, but she blinked them back. "No crying, not today. And after when I'm gone you'll keep fighting, right? Keep building this better world?" "Sarah, promise me that too." Her voice was fierce now, demanding. "Promise me my death won't break you. That you'll survive. That you'll make sure other wolves like me don't have to be afraid anymore. I promise." But his eyes held oceans of grief. "But you're not going to die. You're going to shift beautifully. Control the flame perfectly. Prove every single one of them wrong. Maybe." She managed a smile. "Or maybe I'll go out in a blaze of glory and become a cautionary tale for the next 200 years. That's not funny. It's a little funny." But her smile faded. "Cale, if this is our last day together." "It's not. But if it is, I need you to know something." She cupped his face, made him focus on her. "These past few days with you have been the best of my life. You made me feel seen, feel valued, feel like maybe I wasn't just a mistake waiting to be corrected. You were never a mistake." His voice was raw, broken. "You were always meant to be exactly this, powerful, beautiful, mine." The last word hung between them, weighted with everything they'd been dancing around. "Yours," Sarah repeated softly. "Is that what you want? For me to be yours? I want you to be yours first." Cale's thumb brushed across her cheekbone. "To belong to yourself, to choose your own path. But if when you survive this, if you decide you want to explore what this is between us." He swallowed hard. "Then yes, I want you to be mine, want to be yours, want to build something together that doesn't end in tragedy. That sounds like a future." Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "And futures are dangerous things to dream about. Then let's be dangerous together." She kissed him then, slow and deep and full of every word they were too afraid to say out loud. The silver flame pulsed between them, warm, steady, certain. The mate bond they'd been fighting sang in recognition, trying to tie itself permanently around their hearts. Not yet. Not until she proved she could survive what was coming. But maybe, just maybe soon. They pulled apart when Mira knocked, entering with clothes for the ceremony. Traditional garments white for Sarah, symbolizing either purity or sacrifice depending on the outcome. Black for Kale, the color of mourning or protection. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. The packs are gathering, Mira said, her voice heavy. I've never seen so many wolves in one place. Representatives from every territory. Even some from beyond our borders. Good. Sarah's chin lifted. Let them all watch. Let them all see. There's something else. Mira hesitated. Vera's been spreading a rumor. Says that if you survive the shift, if you prove you can control the flame, she'll challenge you anyway. Trial by combat. Old law. Says the kingdom has a right to test your strength, not just your control. Of course she will. Sarah wasn't even surprised. She'll do whatever it takes to see me dead. You could refuse the challenge, Kale said. Combat trials aren't mandatory if I refuse, I look weak. Afraid. Sarah shook her head. No. If she challenges me, I'll accept. Might as well settle everything in one night. You're not a warrior, Mira said gently. Vera's been training for decades. She'll tear you apart. Then I'll burn her first. Sarah's smile was sharp, feral. I've got moonflame, and nothing left to lose. That makes me more dangerous than any trained warrior. Mira looked at Kale. Talk sense into her. I can't. He sounded resigned. She's made up her mind. And honestly, I think she's right. Better to face everything at once than draw it out. You're both insane. But Mira helped Sarah dress anyway, her hands gentle as she arranged the white fabric, braided silver cord through her hair. By the time she was finished, Sarah looked like something from legend. A moon maiden, a warrior priestess, a sacrifice dressed for the altar. Perfect. Sunset came too quickly. Sarah stood in a small antechamber just off the courtyard, listening to the crowd outside grow louder, restless, eager. They'd come for a show, either her victory or her death. Either way, they'd get their entertainment. Thorn appeared in the doorway. They're ready for you. And Vera? Front row, already promised to challenge you if you survive the shift. Thorn's expression was grim. You don't have to do this, you know. There are other ways. No, there aren't. Sarah moved to the door, paused. If I don't make it, thank you, for standing with me, for believing I was worth the risk. You are worth it. Thorn's voice was gruff. Now go prove it to the rest of them. Kale was waiting at the entrance to the courtyard. He took her hand, laced their fingers together. Whatever happens, I know. She squeezed once. I love you too. She'd said it. Finally said it out loud. Kale's eyes widened, then filled with something that looked like wonder and grief mixed together. Come back to me, he whispered. Please, just come back to me. I'll try. It was the only promise she could make. They walked into the courtyard together. The crowd erupted into noise, cheers from some, jeers from others. Mostly just shocked silence as they took in the sight of the rejected Omega walking beside their disgraced king like an equal. The platform loomed ahead, torches burning silver and bright. At its center stood an altar, the same one from the Whisperwood, somehow transported here. Sacred ground. Neutral territory where magic worked differently. Vera stood at the platform's edge, her expression cold and satisfied. Are you ready, girl? More than you know. Sarah climbed the stairs without hesitation, stood at the center of the platform where everyone could see. Silence fell like a curtain. You all came here tonight to witness something, Sarah said, her voice carrying across the courtyard. To see if I'm what you fear or what you need. To judge whether power like mine deserves to exist. She turned slowly, meeting eyes across the crowd. I don't blame you for being afraid. Fear is natural when faced with something unknown. Something that doesn't fit into the neat categories you've created. But here's what I know. She placed her hand over her heart. I'm not a monster. I'm not a curse. I'm just a wolf who's been running her whole life. From rejection. From shame. From my own power because I was taught it made me wrong. Well, I'm done running. The silver flame began to build, visible through the white fabric of her dress. Tonight, I stand before you. I shift. I show you exactly what I am. And you decide, is she worth saving? Or should she burn? The crowd murmured, shifted. Some hostile. Some curious. Most just uncertain. Sarah closed her eyes. Let the flame build. Let it grow until her skin glowed like moonlight. And then, with every wolf watching, with Kale's hand pressed to his heart like he was trying to hold himself together, she began to shift. Now, here's where I need you to do something. You've been with Sarah from the beginning, felt her fear, her courage, her desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, she could be more than what the world told her she was. And right now, she's standing on that platform, about to either prove everyone wrong or die trying. So I'm asking you, would you have chosen her side? Would you have stood with Kale, believing in someone the world had already condemned? Or would you have been in that crowd, afraid, uncertain, ready to watch her burn? It's an uncomfortable question, isn't it? Because it's easy to root for someone in a story. Harder to examine what we'd actually do when faced with someone different, someone powerful in ways that scare us. If this story is touching something inside you, if Sarah's fight feels familiar, if her courage inspires you, then hit that subscribe button right now. Join Clarissa Romance Collections. Because we don't just tell stories here. We explore what it means to be human, to be afraid, to choose love over fear even when the cost is everything. Drop a comment. Tell me, are you Team Sarah, Team Vera, or somewhere in between? And what would you do if you met a lunar Omega in real life? Turn on notifications, because this story isn't over. Not by a long shot. Now let's see if Sarah survives what comes next. The shift was agony and ecstasy all at once. Sarah felt her bones rearranging, felt fur sprout from skin that glowed with inner fire. The silver flame poured through every cell, transforming her, reshaping her into something that was wolf but also more. The crowd gasped, because standing on that platform where a girl had been moments before was a wolf unlike any they'd ever seen. Pure white fur that shimmered like starlight, eyes that burned liquid silver, and flames, moon flames, dancing across her coat, like living things, never burning, just illuminating, making her look like a creature from mythology, a lunar Omega in her full glory. Sarah stood there, held the form, held the flame, felt it trying to surge out of control, trying to consume everything like it had consumed Thalia. Control, she told it. We are control. We are power with purpose. The flame obeyed, settled, became part of her instead of threatening to consume her. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. The crowd erupted, not in fear, in awe, but before anyone could speak, before anyone could react, Vera stepped forward. Beautiful, she said, and there was genuine admiration in her voice. Truly, beautiful. But beauty doesn't mean safety. I challenge you, Sarah of the Crescent Moon Pack. Trial by combat. Right now. Prove you're strong enough to exist. Sarah shifted back to human, the flames receding but not extinguishing. She stood naked on the platform, traditional for challenges, and met Vera's cold eyes. I accept. And somewhere in the crowd, Kale screamed her name. But it was too late. Vera was already shifting. And the real fight was just beginning. Chapter 10. Vera's wolf was nightmare made flesh. Massive, dark as pitch, with scars crisscrossing her muzzle that spoke of decades of violence. She was easily twice Sarah's size, an alpha-born warrior who'd survived countless battles. And she was fast. Vera lunged before Sarah could fully brace herself, jaws snapping for her throat. Sarah rolled, felt teeth graze her shoulder, drawing blood. The silver flame roared in response, surging to protect her, but she held it back. Control. Always control. She shifted mid-roll, her white wolf form materializing in a burst of moonlight. Smaller than Vera, yes. Less experienced, absolutely, but faster. And burning with power that had been suppressed for 3 years. They circled each other on the platform, two wolves moving in a deadly dance while the crowd held its breath. Vera struck again, a feint to the left, then a vicious snap toward Sarah's flank. Sarah barely dodged, felt the older wolf's teeth tear through fur. Pain bloomed hot and immediate. She's testing me, seeing how much damage I can take before the flame takes over. Because that was the real challenge, wasn't it? Not just defeating Vera, but doing it without losing control, without proving that lunar Omegas were too dangerous to exist. Sarah backed away, buying time, buying space. The silver flame pulsed beneath her skin, begging to be released, begging to reduce Vera to ash. No. Not like that. Never. Like that. But Vera wasn't giving her space to think. The alpha charged again, all fury and teeth, driving Sarah back toward the edge of the platform. One more step and she'd fall into the crowd. Be vulnerable. Be finished. So Sarah did the only thing she could. She stopped running, met Vera's charge head-on, letting the silver flame burst outward not as a weapon, but as a shield. A wall of moonfire that Vera crashed into with a yelp of surprise. Not burning her. Just stopping her. Just proving that power could protect without destroying. Vera scrambled back, eyes wide with something that might have been fear. Might have been respect. Is that all you've got? Sarah's voice came out wrong, layered, multiple tones speaking at once. The voice of a lunar Omega fully awakened. Because I expected more from someone who talks so much about strength. She advanced now, and the crowd pressed back, feeling the power radiating from her, not threatening, just there. Undeniable, ancient, holy. Vera snarled, regrouped. Charged again, but this time, Sarah was ready. She sidestepped, used Vera's momentum against her, sent the older wolf stumbling. Then she was on her back, jaws at her throat. Not biting, not killing, just holding. Yield. Sarah's power whispered into Vera's mind. The way alphas commanded, the way legends did. You've lost. Acknowledge it. For a heartbeat, Vera struggled. Then, slowly, she went still. The universal sign of surrender. Sarah released her, stepped back, shifted into her human form. The silver flame danced across her skin like victory, like vindication, but she held it gentle, controlled. I'm not your enemy, she said, her voice carrying across the silent courtyard. I never was. I'm just different, just powerful in a way that scares you. But power doesn't have to mean destruction. It can mean protection. It can mean hope. She looked at Vera, still in wolf form, still on the ground. You were right to fear what happened to Thalia, right to want to protect the kingdom from that kind of loss. But I'm not her. I'm me. And I'm asking you, all of you, to give me a chance to prove that different doesn't mean dangerous. Silence, heavy and absolute. Then, from the crowd, someone began to clap. The young guard who'd spoken about his sister. He was clapping, tears streaming down his face, looking at Sarah like she'd given him something he'd thought was lost forever. Hope. Others joined, slowly at first, then building. Not everyone there were still wolves who looked at her with fear, with suspicion, but enough. Enough that it mattered. Lyra stepped onto the platform, placed a formal cloak around Sarah's shoulders. By the laws of trial by combat, you've proven your strength. By the testimony of these witnesses, you've proven your control. She looked at the crowd, her voice ringing with authority. I move to recognize Sarah as a full member of this kingdom, under the king's protection, with all rights and privileges afforded to wolves of her standing. Seconded, Thorn called from somewhere in the crowd. Thirded, came another voice, then another, then dozens. Vera shifted back to human, stood slowly. Her expression was unreadable, defeat and respect and lingering fear all mixed together. You won, she said simply. I acknowledge it. Then acknowledge one more thing. Kale climbed onto the platform, moved to Sarah's side. She's my chosen mate, my partner. And anyone who wants to challenge her will have to go through me first. He took her hand, lifted it high. I present to you Sarah Moonborn, Lunar Omega, survivor, and if you'll have us your queen. The crowd erupted, some in celebration, some in protest, but mostly in shock, because it had happened. She'd done what everyone thought was impossible. She'd survived her own power. Sarah stood there, wrapped in Kale's cloak, and his love, the silver flame dancing gently across her skin. She'd proven she could control it, proven she was strong enough to exist. But as the celebration began, as wolves flooded the platform to swear loyalty or demand answers, something shifted. The ground trembled. Just once. So subtle most people didn't notice. But Sarah felt it. And judging by the way Kale's hand tightened on hers, he felt it too. From somewhere beyond the palace walls, beyond the kingdom itself, a howl rose. Not a wolf's howl. Something older, darker, wrong in a way that made every instinct scream danger. The silver flame in Sarah's chest pulsed. Not in response to her emotions, in warning. She looked at Kale, saw her own fear reflected in his eyes. What was that? Someone in the crowd asked nervously. Before anyone could answer, Thorn appeared at the platform's edge, his face grim. "My king, we have a problem. The border guards just reported something. Multiple somethings." "What kind of somethings?" Kale demanded. "Shadows, moving through the forest. Not wolves, not any creature they recognize." Thorne's voice was tight with barely controlled fear. "And they're all heading this way." The celebration died instantly. Wolves began shifting, taking defensive positions, preparing for an attack no one understood. But Sarah understood. Or at least, she was beginning to. Because the silver flame was showing her something. A vision. A memory from the Whisperwood that she hadn't realized she'd absorbed. Thalia, in her final moments, screaming words that her mate thought were madness. "They're coming. The ones who gave us this power. They're coming to reclaim what we stole. It's not just about lunar omegas being dangerous," Sarah whispered, the truth hitting her like a physical blow. "That's not why the old laws were written, not why Thalia's mate killed her." "Then why?" Kale asked, though his face suggested he already knew, already understood. "Because the moon's gift comes with a price." Sarah's voice shook. "And when a lunar omega awakens fully, when she claims her power completely, she doesn't just become a bridge between mortal and divine. She becomes a beacon. A signal." "A signal to what?" Vera demanded, all their animosity forgotten in the face of this new threat. Sarah met her eyes. "To the old ones, the beings who lived before wolves, before mortals, the ones who gave Thalia her power 200 years ago." She paused, felt the truth settle like ice in her veins. "And who've been waiting ever since for another lunar omega to rise, so they could come back. So they could reclaim this world they once ruled." The courtyard went deathly silent. Another howl rose from the forest, closer this time, multiple voices joining in a chorus that sounded like the end of everything. "How long?" Kale's voice was steady despite the fear in his eyes. "How long until they reach us?" Sarah reached out with her power, felt the shadows moving through the forest like a tide, felt the ancient hunger driving them forward, felt them respond to the silver flame in her chest like it was a homing signal. "Minutes," she said. "We have minutes." "Can you fight them?" Lyra asked. "Your power." "My power is what called them here in the first place." Sarah's laugh was bitter. "I proved I could control the flame. But I never asked if I should have awakened it at all." She'd spent 3 years running from her power. Tonight, she'd finally embraced it, claimed it, proven she was strong enough to survive it. And in doing so, she'd doomed them all. The ground trembled again, harder this time. Cracks appeared in the courtyard stones. The torches flickered, their silver flames turning dark. Wrong. From the forest's edge, shapes began to materialize. Not solid, not quite real. Things that moved like wolves but were made of shadow and malice and ancient rage. And at their head, stepping from darkness into moonlight, came something that made every wolf, alpha, beta, and omega alike, drop to their knees in instinctive submission. A being that was neither wolf nor human, but something that predated both, tall, impossibly beautiful, with eyes that held the cold light of distant stars. It looked at Sarah, smiled, and spoke in a voice that echoed from everywhere and nowhere. "At last, the debt is due. Did you think the moon's gift was free, little one?" Sarah's blood turned to ice, because she understood now. Understood what Thalia's mate had really been protecting them from. Why he'd killed his beloved before her power reached its peak. It wasn't just about losing control, it was about what came after. What waited on the other side of ascension. The old ones hadn't given Thalia her power out of kindness. They'd given it as a leash. A way to mark their territory. A beacon to call them home when the time was right. And Sarah, stupid, naive Sarah, had just lit that beacon at full brightness. "What do you want?" she demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. The old one's smile widened. "What we've always wanted, child. What we lost when the mortal wolves drove us out 2,000 years ago." It gestured at the kingdom, at the wolves standing frozen in terror. "We want our world back, and you're going to help us take it." "Never." Kale moved to stand in front of Sarah, protective even in the face of certain death. "You'll have to go through all of us." "Oh, we will." The old one laughed, and the sound was like bones breaking, like stars dying. "But first, we'll take what belongs to us." Its eyes fixed on Sarah, the lunar omega, the vessel, the key to unmaking everything your kind has built. The shadow wolves surged forward, and as chaos erupted, As wolves fought desperately against enemies they couldn't truly touch, Sarah felt something inside her chest crack open. The silver flame, her power, her gift, her curse was changing, darkening, responding to the old one's call like it had been waiting for this moment all along. "No," she gasped, trying to hold it back, trying to maintain control. "No, I won't let you. You already have, child." The old one's voice was inside her head now, inside her soul. "The moment you embraced your power fully, you opened the door. And now there's no closing it." The last thing Sarah saw before the darkness took her was Kale's face. Horrified, determined, reaching for the blade at his hip, keeping his promise, choosing the kingdom, choosing to stop her before she became the weapon that destroyed everything. "I'm sorry," she tried to say. "I'm so sorry," but the words wouldn't come, and the darkness swallowed her whole. Somewhere in the chaos, in the space between heartbeats, a voice whispered, "Not the old ones." Something else, something that sounded like the forest itself, like the spirit wolves, like ancient magic that predated even the beings that claimed dominion here. "She is not the only one. There are others, hidden, waiting, growing strong in the shadows where the old ones cannot see." A flash of vision, brief, impossible to verify. Another girl. Younger. With silver eyes and hands that sparked with flame she hadn't yet learned to name. Living in a small pack on the kingdom's farthest border. Unaware of what she was. Unaware of what was coming. The true alpha hasn't risen yet. The true balance hasn't been struck. This is not the end. It is only the beginning. And then, nothing. Just screaming. Fighting. The sound of a kingdom tearing itself apart as ancient enemies poured through the doorway one reckless lunar omega had opened. As Sarah's consciousness flickered, caught between darkness and flame, between life and whatever came after, she thought she heard Kale's voice, breaking, begging, "Come back to me. Please. Just come back." But she didn't know if she could. Didn't know if there was anything left to come back to. Didn't know if the girl who'd stood on that platform and claimed her power still existed, or if she'd been consumed by something infinitely older and infinitely more terrible. The silver flame pulsed once, twice, and then went dark. Would you have chosen her side, even knowing the cost? Even knowing that her power, that beautiful, terrible gift, would bring ruin as surely as it brought hope? Sarah wanted to be more than the world told her she could be. Wanted to prove that different didn't mean dangerous. That power could be controlled. That love could conquer fear. And maybe she was right. Maybe she could have been the hero this story needed. Or maybe, just maybe, she was always meant to be the catalyst. The spark that set the world on fire so something new could rise from the ashes. We don't know yet. Because this story? It's not over. Not by a long shot. The old ones have returned. Sarah's fate hangs in the balance. And somewhere out there, another lunar omega is waking up to powers she doesn't understand. Powers that might be the only thing standing between the mortal world and complete annihilation. So here's what I need you to do. If you're invested in Sarah's story, if you need to know whether she survives, whether Kale keeps his promise, whether love or duty wins in the end, then subscribe to Clarissa Romance Collections right now, because we're just getting started. This is part 1 of a saga. A journey into a world where power demands sacrifice, where love is tested by impossible choices, where broken wolves discover they were never broken at all, just unfinished. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications. Drop a comment telling me, do you think Sarah survives? Do you think she's the hero or the villain? And what would you do if you discovered you had power that could save the world or destroy it? The next chapter is coming. And trust me, you don't want to miss it, because in this world we're building together, the most dangerous thing isn't the monsters that hunt you. It's discovering you might be the monster yourself, and learning to love yourself anyway. The moon hung overhead, cold and distant and utterly indifferent to the chaos below. In the palace courtyard, wolves fought and died and screamed for salvation that wouldn't come. Kale stood over Sarah's unconscious body, blade in hand, tears streaming down his face, caught between the promise he'd made and the love that made that promise unbearable. Vera rallied what remained of her forces, barking orders, trying to organize a defense against enemies that couldn't be fought with teeth and claws alone. And the old ones laughed, because they'd waited 200 years for this moment. 200 years for another lunar omega to rise, to open the door, to give them back what the mortal wolves had stolen. Everything was going according to plan, almost, because deep in the Whisperwood, where the portal still pulsed with silver light, the spirit wolves gathered. Ancient guardians who'd watched kingdoms rise and fall, who'd seen the old ones first reign and helped drive them out. And they were making a choice. The largest one, the one who'd bowed to Sarah, who'd recognized her as kin, threw back its head and howled. Not in mourning, not in warning, in summoning. And across the kingdom, in hidden places where magic still lived, where old powers slept, something answered. Something that had been waiting for exactly this moment. For the catalyst, the spark, the girl who'd been brave enough or foolish enough to light the beacon and draw out the darkness so it could finally be faced. The real war was about to begin, and Sarah, broken, unconscious, caught between worlds, was still at the center of it. Still the key, still the hope, still the question everyone was asking but no one could answer. Is she salvation or destruction? Hero or weapon? Chosen one or cautionary tale? The answer would come. In blood and fire and choices no one should have to make. But tonight, the world held its breath and waited to see if the girl who'd spent 3 years running from her power would finally learn to wield it, not just to survive, but to save them all, or damn them. The choice was hers, if she woke up, if the end. For now, thank you for experiencing Sarah's journey. Subscribe to Clarissa Romance Collections for the next chapter in this saga. Because some stories are too big to contain in a single tale, some wolves are too powerful to be silenced, and some loves are worth fighting for even when the cost is everything.